Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this beautiful November morning. And this is the Electoral Area Services Committee. Our meeting for Monday, November the 3rd. Just a little bit of housekeeping, as we always do. If there's any emergencies, there's exits where you came in, as well as the two doors here. And if you need to use the washrooms, they're just down the hall on your right, and you'll see them right here. There's two washrooms. So if we, like I say, if we have to have an emergency situation, then the muster point is outside on the sidewalk. Okay, I also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the fact that we're here today on the official unceded territory of our Comox First Nation peoples. And we have a fairly busy agenda today. And we're going to start off with delegations. We have a delegation first off from the Comox Valley Community Law and Outreach at Wache Friendship Center, Caleb Bird and Dakota McGovern from the Comox Valley Law and Outreach. If you'd like to send somebody up, or you stand up there at the lectern, we'll move it, and I'll second it for now. And press your little button and I'll turn on your mic. Press it again. Uh-oh, there it is.
Can you hear me?
Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Caleb Bird. I use he, him pronouns, and thank you for the acknowledgement, the land acknowledgement. I raise my hands to the Comox First Nations and recognize the privileges I've had as a settler born and raised in the Comox Valley. For the last 3 years, I've served as a community law advocate at Wache Friendship Center, and through this role, I've helped defend over 100 tenants from unjustified evictions in the Comox Valley. Unfortunately, I've also seen what happens when we lose. The extremely limited emergency housing options is what has brought me here today. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dakota. I use he, they pronouns, and I am the Community Outreach Specialist. I am non-Indigenous and have worked in my role at Wache for the past 2 years, supporting individuals through vulnerability assessments, BC housing applications, subsidy programs, and ongoing outreach services. I was directly involved in conducting the point-in-time count and have participated in more than 30 library circle meetings, engaging with people with lived experience of homelessness to better understand the challenges they face. As you know, Comox Valley is facing one of the worst housing shortages in BC, with vacancy rates under 1% and homelessness increasing in the last 5 years. We understand the CVRD is setting up a housing corporation, which we support, but this will take time and will not directly benefit the people we are discussing today. Right now, CVRD zoning rules prohibit people from living year-round in RVs and other mobile homes on private property, with the exception of during construction and with a valid building permit. Bylaw enforcement is complaint-driven and inconsistent, which creates uncertainty for both residents and the districts, while being unfair to mobile home tenants. The 2025 point-in-time count identified at least 218 people experiencing homelessness in the Comox Valley. 63% were unsheltered, and 30% of total respondents identified as Indigenous. The Notsamot Housing Project for low-income Indigenous seniors at Wache is now full. There are often very long wait lists to stay at the Maple Pool Campground, and the 925 Braidwood Emergency Shelter will not open until the middle of 2027, and supportive units are delayed until late 2027. This creates a 2-year gap, inadequate housing supports, leaving many residents without safe options. I regularly work with clients who are unsafe in tents, particularly seniors and people with disabilities, making unsheltered living increasingly dangerous and impractical.
A component of the legal context is that the residential tenancy branch has confirmed its jurisdiction over mobile home tenancies on private land. Some of those tenancy indicators include exclusive possession, regular rent payments, long-term residence, and utility connections. When these conditions are met, tenants may be protected by the Residential Tenancy Act and the Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act. There are good landlords out there that want to do their part to alleviate the housing crisis, but cannot because of the zoning bylaw number 520. I've had clients who have had to vacate because their landlords received fines from this bylaw, and sadly, some of them remain unhoused to this day. Even the threat of enforcement deters people from using mobile homes as temporary housing, adding pressures to shelters and increasing public tension.
Other regional districts in BC are already taking flexible approaches to mobile home living. BC regional districts are responding to housing pressures with flexible RV policies, including positive enforcement, 3-year temporary use permits, and pilot projects for full-time RV living. These housing alternatives show BC communities taking action. During a housing and affordability crisis, this is not the time to restrict alternative housing options. In addition, with a disproportionately high Indigenous unhoused population, housing accessibility is a matter of human rights and decolonization. Therefore, we propose 3 paths going forward. One immediate and straightforward option is to pause bylaw enforcement against people living in mobile homes on private property with the landowner's consent. It follows the compassionate practical example set by other regional districts in similar situations and could create breathing room while long-term solutions are developed.
A second option is to make the temporary use permit process more accessible for people using mobile homes as temporary housing. That could mean reducing the $1,500 fee required by the current process or allowing payments in monthly installments. Our clients seeking the mobile home temporary use permit would benefit from reducing the service requirements. For example, requiring a separate hydro meter for each mobile home is often impractical. Policy option number 3, a more robust and permanent option, could be to develop a CVRD mobile home occupancy bylaw and integrate it into the official community plan, which could mandate a written tenancy agreement, helping tenants protect their rights, mandate clear health and safety standards, set limits on the number of mobile homes per square acre. And because the temporary use permit process requires notice to be provided to the public, this third policy option could provide greater privacy to tenants. Some of the individual benefits of any of these 3 options is that they provide quick, affordable shelter, moving people from hidden homelessness into more easily supported spaces. Housing stability encourages investment in safety features like fire extinguishers and proper sanitation, improving overall safety outcomes. And residents can more easily transition to the Braidwood shelter when it is ready.
Mobile homes are already part of our community, and recognizing them helps make housing more equitable. For example, it can inform emergency services of tenant locations. Having stable pad rentals keeps people from constantly moving, mitigating disruptions to neighborhoods. These policy options can, in the long run, save public resources by lowering enforcement and shelter costs while creating safer, more stable communities.
In conclusion, we are advocating for an enforcement moratorium, an amendment to the temporary use process, or the development of a mobile home occupancy bylaw. Each option has its strengths and weaknesses. While our preference is for the third option, we recognize although that we are experts in unhoused supports and tenancy, we are not experts in nuanced regional bylaw regulations and the building code. So we welcome and appreciate any steps to improve the current framework and would be happy to brainstorm solutions together alongside other community service organizations. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Well put together presentation. Open it up for questions. Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Caleb and Dakota, for the really great presentation. And to the committee, I had the chance to have a call with the 2 of them a week ago, and that was a really great exchange of information around what they're seeing on the ground and some of the cases that happen. And And since then, I've been thinking about that in anticipation of today, and um, it, there's hundreds and hundreds of people living in RVs in the rural areas. And I think you're right that when you prohibit something, you move it on the ground in a way, in effect. Um, and so people try to hide it. And with that comes sometimes the lack of investment or care in how these situations arise. I think I passed out to the two of you this summer. We had two unrelated separate deaths in tiny homes and RVs from beloved community members, one on Hornby and one on Denman. And it was just shocking. And there's definitely situations we want to avoid, like this weekend or last week I went to meet Tammy actually in Fanny Bay, and we have an RV in across from Buckley Bay and in the little parking lot there, and it's like it's now becoming a permanent encampment, and it doesn't look safe at all. I mean, they were like having huge fires when I drove by, and I'm like, what's going on there? So yeah, but there's many more actually that I would say that are working. There's a lot of responsible homeowners out there that have people in semi-temporary or almost sometimes almost permanent situation. But there's also a lot of best practices to look at. So maybe I'll be asking, because I think you bring a lot of really great options for us, and I want to say as a committee, like the last few years since COVID, basically we have, and staff has been the same. We're not looking to evict people from their sites, right? So we're a complaint-based system, and that's where it kicks in. And later on in the agenda, either by chance or by design, but we actually have an item you might want to stay for, which is around our enforcement policy. Because sometimes, for example, a couple of years ago, the Fanny Bay Inn, they had an RV and they had a staff staying there, and it was pretty well organized. And but there was complaint by one person, and just completely coming back and back and back and back, and then we have to enforce our bylaws. So either we revisit our bylaws, which can be tricky, but I think you are right that there's actually nuance options that we could improve on what we have. And maybe staff will want to comment at some point to talk about. Maybe it'd be interesting to hear from staff how we've looked at RVs and mobile homes the last few years, and what may be in the works, or how maybe some of your ideas could find themselves into some of the work that we're doing. So I don't know if staff wants to comment on that, but I realize there's also Chair and Dr. Hardy that might have questions.
Director Hardy, do you have any questions of the presenters?
I don't think I have any questions for the presenters themselves. I do recognize Director Arbor's comments there towards the end with regards to maybe staff providing some further comments with regards to what the CVRD or the Electoral Area Services Committee has done over the last little while here. I understand that this is a huge issue, and yeah, hopefully we can come up with some solutions that's win-win for everybody here at the end of the day.
And just for the presenters, we don't generally make any motions at the meeting where the presenters present the options. That we usually bring back a staff report for the following meeting. So that would be something we could do there. But what do you think, Mr. CAO? Can we have staff answer some of Director Arbor's questions?
I think so. Yeah, we can certainly. You're right. We don't typically
No.
take action on the day of a delegation, but I do understand that staff have had a chance to meet with you, and I'm not sure if Alana Mullally, our General Manager of Planning and Development Services, might want to share a bit of context around the current framework and maybe some opportunities without putting you on the spot, because yeah, typically we don't engage fully at these meetings where delegations present. But Alana, if you had any context around this.
Thanks, Alana.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good morning to the committee and through the chair to the directors. And thanks, Caleb and Dakota. Amanda Yasinski and Lisa Kilpatrick and I met with Caleb and Dakota for about an hour and a half several weeks ago, and we went through a number of these suggestions, and we talked about sort of the world that we operate in, the nuances of bylaw that you're speaking about. And then the real crisis that we have out there. We know that we've got a lot of folks who are living in RVs comparatively from years past. We suspect that the demographics have changed, not insignificantly, in terms of the residents of RVs. And so we know we get it. I guess I would just want to make a couple of points of clarification on some of the language that's been used here. A mobile home is a dwelling unit. Those are regulated, they're standardized, and we can issue a building permit for them. Mobile homes are permitted. It's just a matter of a building permit, and we have many people living in mobile homes in the valley. A recreational vehicle, of course, is something different. It's a vehicle, it's not a structure. There's no way, as Caleb and Dakota have flagged, it's not within the building code. There's no ability to issue a permit for an RV. I've got a couple of things to say, and Amanda might want to join me at the table if you have any specific enforcement questions about what we've done recently. But I can say in the last 15 years, we have brought forward 2 compliance files for further action to you seeking direction. And one of those was a really egregious situation of a landlord, frankly, taking advantage of very vulnerable people, no sanitation, either water, wastewater, or garbage collection. You'll remember that one. We brought that one forward for action. And then the other one is sort of a different nuance, but that was initiated within the last 15 years as well. Not that was about a property owner. That wasn't the demographic that we're likely talking about here. So those are a couple of pieces of clarity I'd like to offer. And then the temporary use permit, that's a tool that you've seen before. You're getting more and more familiar. We're suggesting to you that often that's the tool to deal with some of these challenging, sticky issues. Dakota and Caleb noted that there are property owners, landlords out there who would like to do their part, I believe was the language, by enabling someone to live on their property. And so we brought some of those to you where we have a property owner who's seeking to do that. The terms and the conditions that Caleb and Dakota referenced in respect to their proposed, sorry, I think you called it an occupancy bylaw. That's what we do. I read this and that reads like a temporary use permit to me. I think one of the things that feels sometimes challenging around the temporary use permit is that it's application based, right? People have to come forward. It's not as of right. And we don't have a tool to do that at this point. And, we've wrestled with this for a number of years. I'm not sure that we're there yet. We do have a report coming back to you. We're aiming to bring that in December. You tasked us with coming back to you with some options, and we're doing that. Amanda and I are working on that report now. And we'll lay out some of the options that you might have. So one other thing that I really want to clarify in the letter, Dakota and Caleb have stated, I believe, that they're not lawyers, and I'm not either, but there is a paragraph in the letter that talks about pre-existing legal exposure. If you have read the letter, or if you do read it after this, I would just say that staff does not hold this view. This is not, we do not share this based on our experience. So we can talk about that a little bit further, but I don't want you getting concerned about that piece.
Thank you very much. Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. And maybe to you, to the delegation, or to Alana, or you can both pick it up. But it seems like there's still, and as you say, we'll have a report in December, but what today's presentation made me think about, and you brought up the TUPs as well, is I think a lot of people don't realize those opportunities exist around TUPs, that it doesn't have to be, I mean, for something like that, it doesn't have to be that onerous of a process. And what I do know is we send a newsletter to every resident in the area every twice a year, at least. Twice a year? Yeah, twice a year. And what about if we had like a little section on TUPs for RVs to say, if you have an RV, like I'm not gonna wordsmith the language here, but basically to tell people that it's okay. And then if they want to be more on par and also have that secure, that peace of mind, so to speak, around their situation, that we have an easy TUP process that they can. So I'm just trying to think about, yes, there's the enforcement section, which is very, very nuanced. And in another way, like with our serious bylaw amendment, we also, I think I explained a little bit why we keep a minimum bar to really be able to have the tool to deal with egregious situations. But sometimes that bar will catch people that are near it or whatnot, right? So, but I think on the positive side, yes, of messaging, and maybe as we release, as we consider that report in December, to think about that communication so that I really like what you said. You know, there are some housing on the horizon. There's been some happening the last 10 years, but we need more. But you said that window of 2 years, you know, to let people know that whatever we can do to release kind of that pressure of potentially losing your home is would be very valuable. So, yeah. So I don't know if
Through the chair, if I might add, yeah, that's absolutely something we can do. On the second point here on this slide that's on the screen, this is something that we noted to Caleb and Dakota that this would be a good piece for us. So we have our social planning coordinator in place now, as you know, and her work, she works very closely with a lot of the organizations who are working with folks who are in these vulnerable positions. And so we can certainly add that to her work plan to be doing some outreach specifically on the TUP process and how different agencies, clients, and friends can be getting, maybe some peace of mind with this tool that would give them that certainty that their housing in an RV can be secure. Mhm.
If I may, through the chair. Thank you very much. I just want to point out that the fact that there have been very few people using the temporary use permit process is not a sign that it is working. It's a sign that the current system isn't accessible. Um, one of the main points I wanted to make. And in the letter itself, we do say that nothing we say is legal advice. This is just our opinion. And as far as the legal exposure, that is up for debate, of course. But if people are, yeah, if the CBRD can help prevent harm to these people living in mobile homes, RVs, then our opinion is that CVRD should, and we want to help with that as much as we can.
I'll just add that when we talk about accessibility, the concern is really that people might not feel comfortable coming forward if they feel that they could be in some way or another penalized for not participating in the TUP process as is. And then, of course, the financial costs to it as well, which, especially with low income individuals, can be challenging.
Yeah, and my understanding is that if the application is not approved, they still have to pay the $1,500. And so that in and of itself is a significant barrier.
Thank you. I'm wondering if Director Hardy has any questions or comments on this? Not at this point. Thank you. Okay, well, you know, I always maintain that free legal advice is worth every penny you pay for it. We've got, when it says mobile home up here on the third bullet, again, we're talking about mobile homes, which have a number and are built to spec and all that, right? So that's not really applicable to this conversation, correct? I'm trying. There.
Yeah, my understanding was there's a difference between manufactured home and mobile home and recreational vehicle. I could be conflating some of those. But in the letter, we clearly say that we mean mobile home as inclusive of RVs, vans of larger, like a broader spectrum of housing options that are mobile.
Okay, I take a few here. My question then is, another one is, Are you also taking your dog and pony show to Comox, Cumberland, and Courtney?
Fair question. At this point, uh, we'd like to just focus on the rural areas because I think it's more likely to get public buy-in from the rural areas. In the city, things are closer together, and currently there, Maple Pool Campground is the sort of main place for mobile homes in the city of Courtney, and they're not enforcing in there. So at this point, we're just taking it one step at a time.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Director Arbor for a question.
Yeah, thanks. And I think we brought that up when we asked for the report a few months ago, but I got to attend a session on this at UBCM just a couple of weeks ago. Oh my God, that's already a month and a half ago. And sorry. And Toby Elliott at Alice Trust, the planner, and RDN planners are actually on. I don't know if you can keeping abreast of that, but they're doing some really cool work right now around having RVs and tiny homes be able to meet the manufactured home standard so that they can be considered in the same manner. So these are emergent things that are encouraging. And my last comment, Chair, is something else we might want to look in the future is like we have a great mobile home park policy, right? But I think ever since that policy got put in, we haven't seen a single mobile home park built in the rural areas of the Comox Valley. So maybe our standard is too high. It's a very nice standard, but it's a high standard. What we see instead is places like Seal Bay Park that are, sorry, I'll be careful with my language, but are flirting with year-round occupation. That's all I'll say for today. But we see a lot of situations where we're not attracting investment in a place that perhaps could attract investment. The only place that I can think of that came even close to a new development for smaller homes is like in the Slough in Cumberland. But those homes that like start at 500,000, so it's not really, they're smaller homes. But yeah. So, anyways, I think it's good, and I'm glad that you brought this and that you're focusing on that at Westgate. That's really appreciated because we know rural areas are currently supporting a lot of affordable housing through RVs and other situations, and personally I also want a reduced risk around that, so that like the deaths that we experienced last summer don't happen again. So yeah, very hopeful. So December is the next stop for this conversation. Is that right? We'll get a full report on that. Okay, super. Thank you.
Yeah, while I support you on the idea of a proper mobile home park or manufactured home parks, I mean, that is a business decision, I guess, of property owners, but I would suggest that
I can't hear you, Edwin. I don't know if you turned your mic off.
that goes to my soul, Richard. I always want to be heard. Can you hear me now? Okay. Just talking about the concept of mobile home parks or manufactured home parks, which is a super good idea. I support it because obviously young people could afford the 250,000 or whatever for the building and build equity in that and lease a pad for, whatever, 800. It would be cheaper than living in by the Mexicana in one of those expensive apartments. But I was saying that the servicing is an issue in the rural areas. So, we're up against a rock and a hard place with that. We have a few public water systems, yeah, but we don't as yet have any proper public sewer systems that we could tap into. So that it's a kind of a no-go. BC government, you talk about TUPs. A lot of times we use TUPs to try to compensate for tools we don't have, that we haven't been given by the province, even though there's been talk of a electoral area review for what, 48 years now? And it's going to be next year. So the government loves to kick these issues, the can down the road, so to speak, and that's where it ends up in our laps. We did get a directive. I don't know if this is public knowledge, but let's say that senior government were encouraging electoral areas, actually municipalities and electoral areas, to relax policies. And we have done that. I mean, as you say, there's been only 2 complaints. And if you actually drive around my area, up in Area C, you'll notice a lot of farmers now have RVs, fifth wheels and whatever, on their property, right? Pump and haul, I don't know what they're doing with all that. So it's a complicated issue. Talking to the fire department about this issue, there's concerns, obviously, because if you take an RV and pull it apart, I mean, anybody's had a trailer or whatever and a leak, you realize it's these little compression fittings on super thin PVC piping. You know, I mean, it's not built to any code whatsoever, I don't think. So, and much the same for the electrical. A lot of them have inverters, and people are running them on an 18 gauge cord, 100-foot cord plugged into the neighbors. You know, I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. So, you know, you have, how do we take that kind of legal liability? And that's the question that I guess will come back to us on the report. So we have exposure issues, because if you want to find anybody, you're going to go after us, right? You know, we have the taxpayers to pay the bill. So yeah, that's my major concern. I totally understand the situation. I have people in my area that, you know, the kids have moved home with the grandkids, and they're all living in the fifth wheel in the back, you know, because there's no other place for them. So, you know, we have to address housing in general. But, you know, given the tools that we're given by the province for electoral areas especially, it's really a challenge. So it's a bit of a dance. I think we all hear you loud and clear. So, you know, I'm looking forward to getting a report back on this and reading that, because, you know, obviously we've got another issue coming up later around 514, which is a subdivision for family members on, you know, and some of our policies aren't very friendly to that. But I think there's a real need to relax all the policies around housing, because you know, we're headed into a cycle of austerity. I don't know if they've actually announced the budget yet today, but you know, I don't think it's going to be all sunshine and fluffy clouds. Yeah, separate hydrometers, that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, it's obviously it's a can of worms. TUPs, yeah, you can't really waive fees on anything because they come back to bite you, right? It costs money, so who's going to pay for it? I think we got to, you know, in the big picture, we have to open the door a little wider on some of these things to see if we can even incrementally increase it and make it easier. So, I don't know. One more last one. Director Hardy, you're still good? Okay. Director Harper.
I know I realize we're spending a bit of time on this topic, but one last piece of feedback for December. I think Director Chair Grieve brought up a good point, which is if there's any way to look at options for streamlining TUPs, including the costs, because it's very different to spend $1,500 for you know, a permanent dwelling than for an RV or something like that, right? So if that can be, options can be presented in the report, that would be wonderful.
Okay, without further ado, I'd like to excuse you from the podium, or lectern, and I guess it's lectern. And thank you very much for your presentation, and vote on receipt. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. And now my computer's gone dead. What's that? There we go. Fannie Bay Community Association. Tammy Mercer from the Fannie Bay Community Association to present on some concerns about their little hall. It was built in what, 1919 or something? It's what? It is big. I played in it. Many dances. Okay, well, welcome. Press the button and I'll turn on your microphone. Here we go.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning. My name, as you said, is Tammy Mercer, and I am the president of the Fanny Bay Community Association. And I want to thank the members of the Electoral Area Services Committee and staff for accepting my very last minute request to present today as a delegate. Okay, here we go. My presentation this morning will start with a brief refresher on the Fanny Bay Community Association, who we are, the value that we bring to Area A. You may recall that I was here in late 2024 requesting funding for a structural assessment of the Fanny Bay Hall. Our goal at that time was to understand the extent of a known foundation issue and to determine the first, second, and possibly third steps towards resolving it. I'm pleased to report that the structural assessment is conducted by McElhaney this past summer has been completed, and even better, it came in under budget. However, the process wasn't without its challenges. We experienced several delays that were outside our control, which meant we didn't receive the preliminary report until mid-October. And here's where things took an unexpected turn. The assessment revealed something we were not anticipating, and quite honestly, it's knocked us back on our heels. As a board, we're now facing some difficult questions about our future, and not only of the hall itself, but of the Fanny Bay Community Association as an organization. The Fanny Bay Community Association plays a vital role in keeping our community connected and active. We own and operate several community assets, the community hall, which was built in 1930, by the way, playfield, picnic area, and the newly expanded basketball and pickleball courts. In 2019, we added the Fanny Bay Dog Park, and in 2021, the CVRD installed and now maintains a beautiful community playground. Together, these spaces provide much more than recreation. They give our rural community a place to come together, to share programs and events, to stay active, or simply to enjoy the open space for a picnic, a game of bocce ball, or a friendly one-on-one in the basketball court. The FBCA either sponsors and/or hosts programs and events or rents space to partner organizations for them to host. For example, the Ships Point Improvement District has their annual AGM in our hall. As you can see from the list, the FBCA truly is the go-to place for people of all ages, and it plays a vital role in keeping Fanny Bay and the surrounding area vibrant and connected. We host programs and events that make a real difference in everyday life, things like the annual flu clinic, pedestrian safety workshops, and wills and estate planning sessions. These offerings mean our residents don't have to drive the 30 or 40 minutes to Courtenay or Comox to access these important services. They can do it right here close to home. Our concert series draws audiences from across Vancouver Island, and our Christmas and summer markets are major community highlights. And let's not forget the Fanny Bay Flyer, our monthly newsletter sponsored by the FBCA and delivered free to every household in the community, which keeps everyone informed and engaged. And now a little about us. Oops, didn't go forward. A little about us, the FBCA board. We're a small but mighty group. 9 dedicated volunteers who care deeply about this community and the hall. We meet every month to tackle everything from planning events like the Christmas market, or to decide which grants to pursue, or figuring out how to fund something as practical as a new storage unit. Like many volunteer-driven organizations, we face challenges finding people to step into key roles, both on the board and within the broader organization. But we're incredibly fortunate to have a core group of committed volunteers who quietly keep things running, whether it's taking out the garbage, maintaining the grounds, or stocking up the kitchen for the next event. The old saying, "It takes a village," truly applies here, because that's exactly what the FBCA represents, our village, working together to keep the Fanny Bay community life strong and thriving. As I mentioned earlier, we reached out to McElhaney to provide the structural assessment with the intention of determining next steps regarding the building foundation. You have a copy of the preliminary structural assessment in your package, I hope. While there were several concerning findings, one statement stopped me cold. Until repairs are completed, it is recommended that the roof snow stops be removed and that occupancy of the hall be avoided during high snow load events. That immediately raised a red flag to me, and I couldn't get on the phone fast enough. So I called McElhaney and asked exactly, what do they mean by high snow load events? His response was both simple and unsettling. He said, well, here on the West Coast, what usually follows after snow? And I said, rain. And he said, exactly. So that's when the seriousness of this situation hit me. I've also learned a new meaning for the word deflection as it applies here in this situation. It means bending or shifting under pressure. And our hall has been slowly bending under the weight of snow for years. At some point, cable ties were installed to stabilize the structure, but they weren't done properly. They're now slipping so much that you can physically see the outer wall leaning outwards at the top by 3 or 4 inches. As you'll see in the copy of the assessment, decisions made years past, albeit with the best of intentions, installing snow stops to protect the eaves troughs, and later adding blown-in insulation to reduce heat loss, have unfortunately created this perfect storm. Following McElhaney's recommendation, we scheduled a site visit with Lacasse Construction for October 24th. The board was advised of both the both the report and the visit. During the site visit, I asked Cale Lacasse how quickly he could fit us into their schedule. He said they have a window available November 10th to 15th. That's only a few days from now. And as we know, time is not on our side. The written budget estimate for the structural upgrades didn't arrive until late on October 31st. Hopefully you have a copy of that in front of you. I did send it through, but it might not have come in. I'll summarize it by saying the estimate was $44,603 plus GST. And this covers all labor materials and the site supervision required to complete the structural installation and related work at the Fanny Bay Hall. The estimate includes safety management, insurance coverage, equipment rentals, scaffolding, demolition of soffits, and finishes to access the structural areas. It's really quite complicated when they were talking about it, but what needs to be done, but I won't bore you with it, but there will be 19 new structural ties to bring the walls back in. Excluded from the estimate are permit and consulting fees, hazardous material handling, painting or drywall work, roofing or drainage repairs. A 15% contingency is recommended, as it is with most projects. So that's over and above. In conclusion, I realize this is almost an impossible ask, but I need to be direct. As the president and on behalf of the entire FBCA board, I have to say we're in a pretty precarious position. Right now, we're balancing public safety against practicality. Winter is upon us. Snow can fall at any time. We are not sure we can continue to operate in a hall that is weather dependent. We have a winter market coming up, kids' Christmas concerts on the calendar, and a full schedule of fitness and community programs. If we're forced to close for the winter, we don't just face a financial setback, we risk losing something much deeper, the community's confidence in our safety and stability of the hall. In closing, I understand that it may not be possible for the CVRD to release funds quickly enough to address this in time, but I thought I'd take a shot. That said, the FBCA board has started to discuss reluctantly some alternative plans. We have an emergency meeting tomorrow night talking about how we can maybe have an open house, how we can manage a day-to-day based on weather. One of the things we have discussed over the years is maybe it's time that we stop fighting a losing battle and maybe approach a developer to do something different with the land. It's not where we want to be, but it's the reality we're facing. So today, I'm asking for your help to keep Fanny Bay's Heart, our hall, open and safe for the people who depend on it. I will add that our governance committee held an emergency Zoom meeting yesterday afternoon, and we went through our budget and went through everything to see if there was any dollars we could scrape together. And although it's not a lot, I think we can put together between $10,000 and $12,000 to put towards this bill. So that concludes what I prepared for you this morning. Not very positive, I know, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have for me. And I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, and well put together presentation once again, and only 10 seconds over.
I timed it several times.
Fantastic. And of course, Director Arbor has a few questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Tammy, for the presentation. And I see it as a positive in the sense that we have a board that's on top of things and is doing due diligence, and I started doing asset management on the buildings a few years ago, and actually, I think you guys are doing great work. You're unearthing problems before things literally fall apart. The time pressure is, I do agree, this is an emergency request, and I think there may be ways for us to help on short notice. Of course, staff will probably start frowning right this second, but there may be pathways, I think, for us to help with this. 2 weeks to the billers doing the work is very, very, very short. And but you probably need some level of financial security to get it done. The alternative, I agree with you. And by the way, Chair, I didn't meet with Tammy, so we talked about some of the potential impacts if this doesn't happen. Closing the halls is like catastrophic for the community for this winter. I mean, you mentioned some of the programs, but I mean, there's a couple of concerts that are coming up that are funded by the Arts Council that starts to damage those relationships. Like, there's a lot at stake. This is the community center for Fanny Bay, and it needs to keep operating. And it's great that there's a contractor available. I think we can all agree on that. Usually there's long wait times, somebody ready to do the work. So, so where my creativity kicks in is, I think there's maybe a couple of ways we could help. And obviously staff will want to weigh in on those options, but the first is I would have a question around what reserves exist in the Bainstown facilities budget. Because when I looked at it, it looks like we didn't have anything in there. So I maybe it's not something staff can answer right away, but I am curious about that. Because perhaps we could, if there are reserves in that budget, this would be a very legitimate use of those funds. A more direct opportunity is tomorrow night. And I'm hoping that maybe Director Hardy and Chair Grieve can see the rationale behind that. So tomorrow night at the board, we have an item on the COVID restart funds. And there's $69,000 that it remains unspent. And staff has a recommendation to spend a bulk of it on our fire halls for network connectivity. And some of those funds were going to go, some of those funds that were unspent, for example, we were going to put a washrooms in that outdoor washroom at the Union Bay Hall. That project is not proceeding. So that's 25,000 that's not proceeding that we had allocated, I think 2 or 3 years ago. So there's just a number of items. And what I would say is, in that report for tomorrow night, it says that a lot of those items are tied to the ASC, even though it will be a board decision. Like a lot of those items were ESC, they're projects that did not proceed or whatnot, right? So we have that surplus. The staff recommendation to put it towards network connectivity for our fire halls, I think we could build that into our fire hall budget for next year. I don't think these are emergency issues, right? And I think that if we could do in one fell sweep tomorrow night to secure those funds for the Fanny Bay Hall repair, it would really keep the spirit of what those grants were intended to help out with. It's hard to make a decision like, this came up a week ago. I don't know if staff has thoughts on how they'd like to proceed. I mean, my view is I don't want to see FBCA close the facilities. And they have a path to get the problem resolved. So for us, I think our role is really to support them. And my last comment is I don't want to belittle the other part of the work that you've done around the foundation and all that. And it's we'll save that one for a future day, right? But it's great that you now have sort of what starts to look like the sketch of a plan to address the rest of the deficiencies in the building, but those are not, they're emergency in a number of years, but not for this winter, right? So for the roof, I think the risk of you having to close because you'd be concerned by now that you know this,
Yeah.
if you stay open and an accident happened, that would definitely be on you. So I would ask Dr. Hardy and Dr. Grieve, if you haven't read the report for tomorrow night, at least, maybe you can't comment on it today, but if you have, I would, and unfortunately, I won't be there tomorrow night. My alternate director, Ian Monroe, will be there. So that's why I'm kind of leaning a bit on the two of you. I'll debrief him, but I'd like to push for that as a solution that would be very efficient. Thanks, Chair. Happy for your thoughts.
Thank you, Director. Director Hardy, any comments or questions?
Yeah, after reading the report last night, it's difficult news for sure. I remember the previous delegation, the foundation had serious issues and was, brought into question, and now we got the roof and the walls bulging at the seams. So I guess I am just concerned about, how many more Band-Aids do we put on the building? And maybe we should be looking at different options with regards to that particular hall. Like, to me, it sounds like it's past its expiration date, and maybe we should be looking at a new building rather than trying to continue to put Band-Aids here and there on that building to keep the doors open today. But maybe we should be looking short-term versus long-term here.
And Director Arbor again?
Yeah, and maybe we can pass that question to Tammy a bit from Dr. Hardy. My sense is, and we did discuss that not only last week, but in the past as well. A building like that with the functions that it serves, a new building, you're probably looking at 3 million plus, easy. And so part of why they've done all this work with engineers and folks is to see how do you salvage that building. And when I said I was hopeful around some of the foundation work, I don't think you've got final estimates on that, but there's some pathways. And Dr. Hardy, I think we agree that a rebuild would be years away. So in the meantime, spending 50 grand to make sure that the hall continues to serve the community, I think would be important.
We have looked at, thank you for that question. We have looked at that. And 3 million, probably closer to 4 by the time it was complete, and it would be years down the road. We've also looked at having Nicol Brothers come in and raise it up and do the foundation all at once. We have some issues with that because there's been add-ons to the building. Some of it's actually sitting on a concrete foundation properly, and some of our building is actually sitting on wooden stumps, believe it or not. So it's not that it's not doable. It's just not sure whether the building would sustain a movement like that. It would need a lot of shoring up, and that would still not deal with the roof deflection issue. That has to be addressed at some point. So, we have definitely thought about rebuilding. We've definitely thought about selling the land and setting up in possibly a mobile home type thing to make it our community hall. We've tried to think of all ways to deal with it. Years and years long before I became involved, they did talk about demolishing it, and a hearty group of people got together and said, no, we're going to resurrect it. So, it's happened over the years. It was built in 1930, the original hall, and has numerous add-ons. But it's a well-used hall, and even if we had the money, even in that perfect world, it would be years before it would be built. And I think we'd lose the momentum. People would go elsewhere. They would change their patterns. They wouldn't have that sense of community. That's my hunch, but I'm just one person.
Thank you. And Director Hardy again?
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate the presentation, and I've spoken with a number of different people throughout the Comox Valley, and there's so much support for the Fanny Bay Hall. Whether you live in the town of Comox, Area B, City of Courtney, Village of Cumberland, everybody has fond memories and can go back and talk about their history within that hall. It's a very important establishment for not just folks in Fanny Bay, but for everyone here in the Comox Valley. The question I got, or the concern I have here, is again, we can make things hopefully safe from snowfall, etc. But what if there was an earthquake? That's another concern that I have here as well. And I know not all the buildings in the Comox Valley are safe with regards to an earthquake occurring, but what's the likelihood, or what's the concerns from the engineer's perspective with regards to if an earthquake was to occur in and around Fanny Bay?
I think in the report, you'll see that he did touch on it a bit. And long story short, it wouldn't sustain an earthquake. Neither would my house. So, I don't think that that the hall's alone, if we had an earthquake, particularly in Fanny Bay, there's a lot of older homes, and yeah, we could try to upgrade it, but that's going to cost a lot of money as well. So yes, in a perfect world, like I said, we would rebuild the hall, but I don't see that as in my lifetime.
Well, it made it through the 1947 one.
Yeah, it must have, right?
I don't see any questions. I'm going to ask a few. I guess over to staff. In our community hall fund, the Southern Community Halls, is there any leverage in that going forward?
So you're speaking to the Bainstown Community Facility Support Service. That's number 672. I understand there's about $17,000 in reserve for the for that service in particular. Of course, we're heading into our budget season and trying to understand what the needs are across the number of facilities that service does support. Recognizing the urgency of your presentation here.
And that is taking into consideration the 2025 requisition?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that whittles it down a little bit. Director Hardy. Sorry, Director Arbor there.
Yeah, thanks. Again, the topic probably for budget, that one, but I've already spoken around the Bainstown facilities budget, and I think I've seen all that I really want to see. And we have some plan increases, but as this example exemplifies, like when you look at asset management, where the budget is 80,000, right, for the yearly budget currently for the Bainstown facilities, and we are supporting Fallen Alders, Royston Hall, Union Bay Hall, Fanny Bay Hall, Fanny Bay Seniors Hall. We're supporting 5 halls with 80,000. Hornby Allen has 1 hall, and now the Art Center, 80,000 for 1 hall. If in fact maybe more than that, and Denman a similar amount. So we're, as area director, I see that we have a need to really increase the budgets for the halls in the southern area, considering that there's so many of them with so little money going towards it. And that's something I'll bring forward at budget. But in the meantime, I'm trying to stay focused on like this presentation, why there was an emergency request for a delegation. And I'm hoping that not only with Dr. Grieve and Dr. Hardy and maybe staff, that if tomorrow and asks, and I agree, maybe using up the 17,000 in the reserve and maybe finding the balance of the cost in the COVID restart funds discussion at the board tomorrow would be amazing and would solve the problem, at least, as Dr. Hardy said, not for the long term, but at least for the next 2, 3, 4 years. They're going to get into foundation work, all that stuff, and then there'll be further conversation around, is this an end of life situation, and if so, how do we start planning for a new build? As Tammy said, this is a multi-year discussion, not a 2 months discussion.
Another question to staff is there any problem with changing up the funds from the restart? Is there any problem because we applied for it under a different premise? Would there be any ramifications of changing the scope of it at this point?
Yeah, I want to just be able to double check. We received those monies as part of the COVID pandemic recovery, and there was some conditions associated with the receipt of those funds. I just want to double check that that there isn't any prohibition to directing those funds. This may be something that you ask staff to come back with some options for at tomorrow night's board meeting. Recognize the urgency. We would be able to do as much analysis as we can in short time, but it may be something you want the staff to come back with.
That sounds like the plan. Director Hardy has a question first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I guess at the end of the day, what is the ask again? Because I really didn't see that in the presentation. So maybe we could, what's the direct ask here at the end of the day? It's funds, what, how much funds?
Director.
Yeah, so Dr. Hardy, she circulated a paper, so we'll make sure you get that. But it's 44,603 plus GST is the ask. And I want to thank the CEO for being willing to look at this. Maybe in the staff report tomorrow, there was an option 2, which obviously option 1 was allocate to the fire halls, but there was also an option 2 for the board to have alternative options. So this would definitely at least fit in the printed record of the options. And then if staff is able to do any analysis and work prior to that, I would be so grateful.
And you figure you guys can cobble together about 10.
That's correct.
So that leaves about 17. That's doable. And perhaps you can get Lacasse to give you 90 days on everything.
I was kind of hoping for that as well.
You tell Kale I told him.
I'll
Okay.
talk to him.
Sounds good. So I guess that's all we can go at this point in time.
Okay.
So well, thank you very much for bringing
Thank
this forward. Obviously, we have to look after our communities and our community halls. Been a big supporter of that since I got elected. So, we got, we thought we had problems at the Merville Hall until you guys came along with all your issues. So you kind of took the cake.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And we'll vote on receipt. Anybody opposed receipt? That carries. So we got a bit of a direction there, and we don't need to give a direction to staff. We'll just, do we need a direct?
Yeah, I think it's always helpful that if the committee wants to consider giving that
A new
instruction
business,
or
okay.
direction. Yeah.
We'll rely on Director Arbor to bring it up. Moving right along, we have the Advisory Planning Commission minutes for receipt. Oh, golly, hold on, back up. The never-ending resolution status report for the electoral areas for receipt. Did they find one? Director Arbor?
Just for Chair Grieve and Dr. Hardy. So we had a delegation from Morbihan Co-op come a couple of months ago, and it was determined that actually the CVRD could not back the application based on number of items, so that we can probably scratch that one off the list. It is highlighted here, but just for your awareness, it sounds like you're aware.
Okay. With that adjustment, anybody opposed? That carries. And now the Advisory Planning Commission minutes. Both. Any discussion on that? Anybody opposed? That carries. Now on to business. Electoral Area A Farmland Protection Development Permit for 3678 Trent Road. And I'll second it and over to staff.
Thank you very much. Stephanie Pollock is our planner 2, and Stephanie will be introducing this staff report. And Ton True, Manager of Planning Services, is available to support as well. So Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning through the chair to the directors. I'll first just introduce the applicant and agent, Christy Shambrook, as well as one of the property owners, Mark Latta, and welcome you to the table here if you don't mind joining us. Thank you so much. An application has been received to consider a farmland protection development permit for the development of a new 135 square meter single detached dwelling at 3678 Trent Road. The eastern and southern lot lines directly abut a property within the Agricultural Land Reserve, the ALR. Existing development on the property includes a 78 square meter single detached dwelling, which will become the secondary dwelling once the proposed house is constructed. There is also an existing septic system that serves the existing dwelling and will serve the proposed dwelling as well. In general, the objective of the Farmland Protection Development Permit area is to provide an interface between farmland and non-farmland to mitigate potential land use conflicts. As best practice, the Farmland DPA guidelines recommend locating residential dwelling units at least 30 meters away from a common boundary within the agricultural areas, with 15 meters being a vegetated buffer, including fencing. In this case, the applicant proposes the siting within the 30-meter setback of a residential dwelling and within the 15-meter vegetative buffer on the south side of the property line, with a minimum vegetative buffer of 5 meters where the house is sited, for the following two reasons. One, for continued use of the existing septic system, which is located such that it prevents the siting of the proposed dwelling from being set back further from the southern ALR property line. And two, it's the owner's preferred location for privacy between this proposed dwelling and the existing dwelling on the property. In support of the application, a landscaping and fencing plan was submitted. There's some existing mature vegetation within the proposed vegetative buffer, and the new proposed vegetation will add to this buffer and includes a variety of trees and shrubs. The applicant has included a fencing cost estimate and proposes the replacement of the existing fencing with solid fencing along the entirety of both the southern and eastern lot lines. Staff, with the input from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and the Agricultural Advisory Planning Commission, are satisfied that the proposed mitigative measures are sufficient to compensate for the proposed siting within the Farmland Protection DPA. As such, staff recommend issuance of the development permit for a minimum 5-meter building setback with vegetative buffering from the southern lot line, a minimum 15-meter setback from the eastern lot line with vegetative buffering, as implemented per the submitted landscaping and fencing plan. Staff, as well as the applicant and agent, Christy, and owner Mark, are available to answer any questions you might have at this time. Thank you.
Any questions, directors? Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. I'll be supportive of that. And it all looks good. I also like the design of the building. It's nice to see a house like white. Everybody's going black these days. I'm not the fan of that as much, but that's just my own personal commentary for today. Yeah, it's a beautiful building and beautiful road. Like congratulations on being on that road and having access to some of our park amenities and all that. So good to go with me. I think you've addressed the guidelines quite well with that, and thanks to staff for the work.
And Director Hardy?
Any concerns or issues with neighbors with the fence going up?
No, sorry, through the chair to the director. While this development permit process does not include neighbor notification, we do always reach out to the neighboring farmland property owners. And in this particular case, the neighboring farmland owners are actually the same owners as this application.
And do the applicants have anything to add? Press a little light there. I'll turn you on yet.
I don't think we have anything to add. Just thank you for your time. And I think Stephanie has done a really good job outlining everything.
Very welcome. Okay, so that brings us to the part of the show where we vote on receipt. So I'll excuse you from the table. Thank you very much. And on receipt, is there anyone opposed? Carries. And if someone can move the recommendation. Moved by Director Arbor, nodded by Director Hardy. So the recommendation is on the table. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Anybody opposed to the recommendation? That carries. Thank you very much. Number 3, Local Government Act, Section 514, the Rural Comox Valley Zoning Bylaw. Report for receipt. And I'll second it. Over to CAO for introductions.
Thank you, Chair. Jody McLean is our Senior Planner, and again, Tom Trudeau is our Manager of Planning Services. And Jody will be introducing this report. Jody.
Thank you. Through the CEO to the Chair and Directors. At the committee's August meeting, staff presented a report to introduce options to address implementation of Section 514 of the Local Government Act, which is the subdivision to provide a residence for a relative provision. And that's Appendix A in your package. Following its deliberations, the committee concluded that additional analysis is needed in order to commit to the recommended change. And just as a quick review here, the Local Government Act in Section 514 enables a provincial approving officer in a subdivision application to ignore the minimum lot size of a property zone if certain conditions are met, like the owner having owned the property for at least 5 years and the owner agreeing to use the severed parcel for residential use by them or their family for at least the next 5 years. At the same time, the provision does still allow the local government to create a minimum lot size that is specific to the Section 514 applications. And the CVRD does this by stating in the zoning bylaw, the Section 514 subdivision, regardless of its proposed size, may only occur on properties that are at least twice the size of their zone's minimum lot size criteria. Okay. All right, so now this report, specifically in the request, the committee was seeking mapping of where the CVRD was receiving zoning amendment applications relating to Section 514. That's where the 2 times the parcel size condition was preventing the subdivision, triggering the need for the zoning amendment. And that's figure 1 in your report and on the screen there. So since 2016, we have seen 9 such zoning amendment applications, all of them either in the rural settlement areas or the settlement expansion areas. It's different in the agricultural areas. That's where ALR subdivision applications are used instead. And that requires the approval of the Agricultural Land Commission regardless of anything else. Settlement nodes like the Saratoga Beach and the Union Bay area are also a little bit different in that the subdivisions there are accommodated through conventional rezonings like country residential to residential zones without needing to invoke Section 514. So we have seen 4 applications in the rural settlement areas and 5 in the settlement expansion areas that went through this rezoning amendment process. Also requested was information on secondary dwellings on individual lots. And that was done in the context of having viable alternative to providing residence for a relative. The CVRD mapping data allowed us to estimate that there are approximately 1,228 rural and residential properties with 2 or more civic addresses in the rural areas. They are not necessarily all dwellings units, but that's a good approximation of it. For more recent, estimated that there are approximately 280 secondary dwellings constructed since 2019, which is a pretty good uptake. And that's what figure 2 was showing in your package. The data in the image there on the screen that highlights properties in red where the dwellings are built. So the smaller lots, they're more difficult to see, and it's more highlighting the bigger lots there. But generally, the rural secondary dwellings are mostly being constructed in the outskirts of municipalities, followed by the lower density rural settlement areas, which would be the yellowish kind of color there, and a few in the agricultural areas in the settlement nodes. So, Mr. Chair, as you see in Appendix A, that August report provided 3 options. Maintaining the 2 times the size condition, or deleting all references to section 514 from the zoning bylaw, or amending the condition to enable subdivisions in some specified zones and other specified land use designations. And we'll be here for any questions you have.
Thank Jody. Director Arbor.
Yeah, it's been a while since a report hurt my brain that much over the weekend, in the sense of I just felt like going and getting a certificate in planning, because when we were talking about nuance bylaws, and there's a lot to consider here, and I appreciate that staff put some time, including in the table, on the pros and cons, for example, of option 2 to delete reference to 514, and I thought there was some really good thought on option 3A and B. And we're not for decisions today. This is just for feedback. So in my opinion, and thinking back to Director Hardy's comments last meetings around this, I think this is swimming in the right direction, where there may still be spot to provide opportunity. You know, when you mentioned about this settlement extension or growth areas, that is good. I think status quo in option 2, and that's what Director Hardy and myself, and I think Chair as well, were saying last time, that if we fully defer to the province, once you give powers back, you don't, you're unlikely to get it back, and we like to be masters in our own house, so to speak, with our planning bylaws. So I think deferring to the province would not be the way to go. But to have a customized approach for the Comox Valley, which is what I see emerging in 3 and 3B, seems very hopeful after 2 or 3 meetings talking about this one. So I don't know, I'm happy for Chair and Dr. Hardy's comments on this.
Director Hardy. Thoughts?
Yeah, ditto to what Director Arbor has just stated. I like, yeah, it's difficult. We turn around and from a CBRD perspective, turn around and pass the decision making over to the province for sure. To me, we're going one step backwards. So trying to find alternate options, I think, is great. 3A, removing the 2 times parcel size, to me would make the most sense. I'm just wondering about settlement expansion areas, how we would go about that parcel size, or is that parcel size different?
RGS. Or staff? No. Contrary?
Through the CEO to the directors. Thank you, Director Hardy. Just so I understand your question, were you referencing regards to the settlement expansion area and the minimum lot size? I believe the recommendation is there is some concerns with moving forward with supporting 514s in some expansion because it doesn't it's not consistent with the rural land use framework. These areas are really properties where we believe that it's a holding area for future development for the other municipalities to one day incorporate them in. So regards to the 514s in settlement expansion, we do have some concerns with supporting that type of use due to what their OCP and RGS talks about the policies there.
So if I could follow up, Chair, then with regards to the option of diverting all the decisions back to the province, how would that relate to the settlement expansion areas then with regards to the province making those decisions, or would they?
Jody?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah. So if you're talking about option 2 there, to remove the all reference to section 514, that would apply to all lands, even the settlement expansion areas too.
So that's where I'm kind of, if I can, Chair, that's where I'm kind of scratching my head because because of the regional growth strategy, EASC or the CVRD doesn't have that ability to not have the 2 times parcel in place. But if it's going to provincial decision maker with regards to applications, then the 2 times parcel size doesn't come into the decision. So I'm kind of scratching my head going, why is it okay for the province but not okay for the CVRD with regards to looking at the 2 times parcel size being removed?
Director Hardy, I'm not too sure I understand the context of the question. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit, help us understand.
So if we were looking at option 2, for example, where all the decision making goes back to the province with regards to how parcel size or subdivisions are put in place, the province doesn't need to take into consideration the size of those parcels at the end of the day. And the question that I asked staff, based upon what they had stated, was if we go with option 2, or if we go with option 3, option 3 is there's a requirement in the settlement expansion areas for twice the parcel size. But if the decisions revolving around subdivisions, if the CVRD or EASC turned around and waived it and said, BC is going to be the decision maker now, if we're talking about settlement expansion areas, if I understand correctly from staff, was the fact that the BC decision maker doesn't take the 2 times parcel size into account. That's not a requirement. So the question that I asked was, again, from a BC perspective, decision making wise, they don't have to worry about the 2 times parcel size for settlement expansion areas. But for the CVRD right now, we are required to ensure that 2 times parcel size is in place. So I'm wondering why one decision maker has the authority and jurisdiction to waive the 2 times parcel size, but the CVRD and EASC can't waive that same parcel size. So that's the question there to the CAO or staff through the chair.
Okay, thanks. And I think I think that's the question that's in front of the Electoral Area Services Committee right now. You have a bylaw, your zoning bylaw, that includes the 2 times parcel size in the SEAs. And please, staff, jump in if I've got this wrong, but you currently have that in your bylaw. Option 2 would suggest to remove that from the bylaw, enabling Ministry of Transportation, the subdivision approving authority, to not give consideration to that particular piece of your bylaw. Or you maintain that language in your current bylaw, and then that would be consideration for MODI, the subdivision approving officer, to assess that when they're considering subdivision approval.
Okay, thanks. Very helpful.
If I may, I distinctly remember that the subdivision approval officer, during the creation of the RGS, was approving things, and that is the reason why we put the settlement expansion areas into that minimum 4 hectare. So I think that precisely why we stuck it in there was because it would be followed by by Moti in those days. So I'm confused too, because if we're directly contravening our regional growth strategy, then are we not going to be liable to be overturned anyway? Because I think that's the reason why they pushed so hard. At one time, it did say should be 4 hectares, and then it came out of the meat grinder saying will be or shall be. So, but I think that's what happened there, if I can remember correctly. I think probably anybody who was alive during that area might remember that too. So I don't even know if are we actually legally allowed to do that in the settlement expansion area under the regional growth strategy, or will we be pounced upon by the municipalities for not following it?
Through their chair to the directors, you know, the committee may recall that we have went through a bunch of site-specific zoning amendments in this rural settlement nodes. And in the rural settlement nodes, you know, there are just says that, you know, 90% of the growth should happen in the municipalities and 10% of the growth should happen in these rural settlement nodes. These settlement nodes are a place where there are just supports these types of density growth with you know, with a bunch of other conditions. You know, ideally that it has the water and sewer infrastructure in place. If they lack that water or sewer, you know, staff will look at conditions regards to is it within a water surface area? Does the size of the property can manage more density in regards to septic systems, right? These settlement nodes, you know, we have went through site specific, and the board has approved it, and staff has support for a bunch of conditions, but it has been approved in the past in regards to rezoning applications.
That sort of turns that on its head. If you want to bring up page 5 of the report. Just for visuals. Okay. So there you see the amount of agricultural land that basically is beyond our purview. You see the upland resource land, which is basically beyond our purview. So the skinny little pieces there, that's basically all this applies to. And then when you, yeah, so we don't have a lot of leeway on this to begin with. I mean, it's the agricultural land reserve approves. I mean, we do get referrals, but they approve the ALR land, and you can see how much ALR land there is. So yeah, we're not making any motions right now anyway, but I just have to stress the fact that we've heard time and time again, you know, that these subdivisions for a family member might run amok, and we'll have all kinds of unsolicited development in the rural areas. And, you know, I don't see that happening. What I see in my area, at least, are actual honest people trying to create some equity for their kids by splitting off some of the land. So I don't know. I prefer there must be some kind of a hybrid model that would be palatable to the directors here. Personally, I know it's a control issue. People don't want to give up control, but is it control for control's sake? When you have the subdivision officer that makes decisions, I mean, we talk about public water and public sewer, well, that's fine, but it's Island Health or VHA that approve the septic and the water, on-site water. So if it checks off all those boxes, why are we inserting ourselves into this? Is it for a feeling of control? Or do we know better? Is that what this is? So I just feel that we should, again, open up the door a little more. Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to show appreciation for the maps. We did ask for maps, and it's so good to see both the 514s, but also all the secondary dwelling bills over the last number of years. And 280 versus like 10. What we're talking today, what I've come to realize because of those maps and that data is we are literally talking about 2% of cases, right? So it's very small, the amount of 514s that we've done. And this committee has spent the last year and a half talking about 514 and 514. So the amount of attention we're giving to this is kind of insane in comparison to its relative application in real life, So for me, this was triggered by a change in law and policy of the province. We were all happy with it. And unless Chair Gree wants to make a case for number 2, which you started doing, but you said open the door a little bit. For me, I think 3, and you talked about compromise, I think that's where 3 and 3B is going. I really like that for certain areas where it makes sense, we'll preserve the opportunities, and for the others, we'll close the door. Like we've made some progress with all this discussion, again, on 2% of our cases around bills that of a second home, right, or second dwelling. So I would say, because this is for information, let staff refine 3A, 3B. I'm sure they have a lot to weigh in on this. But for me, just to say, oh, let's get rid of the problem and send it to the province. I think we've seen lots of situations where we don't like what the province comes back with. And that is where I come from on this, right? So I think we are there to provide guidance around planning for the rural areas within a regional context of the RGS, as you stated, and that's our job. And I'm loath to delegate much of it. Sorry.
And once again, I have to reiterate that the regional growth strategy was written in a very different time, and a lot of it was at the request of the last minute changes that occurred with consultation of the city and its CEO at the time. The idea of expansion, services being provided by annexation and municipality seems to be a moot point now. So that makes this a very disingenuous kind of a document, dishonest even. So, I do think we're probably waiting for another change from the province coming up. I think there'll be more issues around increasing opportunities for younger people. We see that's it's a really big issue with the younger generations. You can see by the way the votes are going nowadays. So yeah, we have to realize that this is 2025 now, not 2010 anymore. I'll take Director Arbor first.
No, actually, because he's probably on topic. I was going to go somewhere else.
Okay, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to follow up on Director Arbor's comments about application. So currently, right now, we do have 2 active applications. One is the Maxwell application on Davies Road, and we just recently received another 514 application on Forbidden Plateau Road, or a 514. In addition, staff has been speaking with I believe 2, maybe 3 potential landowners that are following this discussion in regards to 514. Just maybe one last comment. I had an opportunity to go back to the August 11th meeting regards to this discussion, and Director Arbor mentioned something about the Cowichan Valley Regional District. So I went into did some research and also contact the Cowichan Valley Regional District Planning Manager. The information she mentioned to me that they haven't received a 514 zoning amendment for the last 4 years. They don't have an RGS. I think they're looking to get an RGS. Some of her comments she shared with me was regards to water capacity issues in the Cowichan Valley, but also the Cowichan Valley Regional District put a covenant down regards to potential sale of the property. So family members do change, and then the issue was that they wanted to sell the property but couldn't because of some type of covenant. So these are the two comments that she shared with me. But I just want kind of to provide some input to Director Arbor because he mentioned something about Cowichan Valley. They haven't did a Section 514 for the last 4 years.
Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. That's good. We're looking elsewhere, and but back at home, you just mentioned we've got a couple of applications. I think my general comment on that, which applies not only to this issue but all issues, is we have to be careful not to hurt in-stream applicants. Is a bit what we learned with this one, to give the fair shot. Like, we haven't changed the policy right now. We're basically struggling with it, and I think there's a fine line there where if people are watching our discussions, like at some point the policy will close and we'll make decisions on how we go about this. But for now, because a couple times over my last 7 years, I hear people that they feel that, and it's not just this case, but they feel like they're caught. Oh, you introduced a floodplain. I was an application. So it's important for us to send, and I don't always do that myself, so I'll count myself in that. But like some signaling, okay, it's okay if you're in here, and the policy hasn't changed yet. And so the fact that you say there's two applications, to me, that's fine. That's what I'm trying to say. We haven't changed the policy yet. But when we change the policy, is like those effective dates. Is at what point is somebody in that stream and okay, right? If they've just hopefully staff has clarity around that. That's all I would ask. That staff has a very clear mind around what those cinch points are from moving from one policy to the next. But today is really that broader picture around where we're heading, as far as I understand. And for me, what I'm signaling is, hey, I'm happy with this. This is still a minor issue. What I was going to say, my other comment is, I think our discussion on RVs and all that, when you were talking about affordable housing for young people, that's going to be much more meaningful than this 514 thing that we're talking about. Like, we've had 10 applications in 10 years or 15 applications in 10 years. It's not a huge thing. We just, to me, just for legal reasons and policy reasons of the province, we need to close the loop. And I'm just signaling I like 3 and 3B because it preserves our opportunity in some of the settlement growth extension area. I agree with Chair Grieve. We need to revisit that whole settlement expansion area, but that table will be at the major RGS discussion in 2027. It's not today, right? So I hope to be there for that discussion and push on it, because I agree with you. If the municipalities have no intent or no clear plan, like we talked about Area B and kind of hodgepodge, let's pick up a few properties as we go along, no comprehensive approach. Area A, Royston, Courtney has got no interest. Yeah, I wouldn't say dishonest, it's just the way it has evolved. There's a gap between the intent of the RGS and how things are evolving. But that's a different discussion than the 514. So for today, I would just say, let's support our staff with the difficult work they're doing and finding a path with 3 and 3B. I'm very supportive. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And I think, like you say, we're swimming in the right direction. I do think that for me, this is kind of an emotive thing. Like, my heart goes out to the people, because especially people my generation, this is the great transfer of wealth from the boomers, right? And they're slapping on capital gains. They're doing whatever they can to get a piece of it, before it happens. And I think that we have to keep that in mind. We have to make it easier for the next generation to gain a foothold. This is one small bit. Yeah, like you say, it's even just the secondary dwellings is great, you know, but sometimes you need a title to actually build equity. One more?
You know, I don't fully disagree with you, but again, like, this is from my personal experience. Most people I know, most families I know that do transitions, they add the kid to the title. That is the easiest way to proceed. You can, it's still mortgageable, like 90% on Hornby of all the people I know. If you're looking to do generational transfer of wealth, that is the easiest thing. Just add the bloody kids to the title. And then when you pass away, actually the administrative burden is so little. I went through it. It's like the easiest path. And so I would say there's still plenty of availabilities for the boomers to pass on their wealth to my generation and the Gen Zs and all that, right? We're not closing the door with this decision. In my opinion, there's lots of other options.
Yeah, I think if we do close the door, we do it at our own peril. Okay, on receipt, any more?
Maybe just one last piece here. So directors, this report was presented as follow-up to your August discussion. In August, there was a recommendation there to proceed with the option 3B. No decision was made in August. You asked for this follow-up report. It is presented here for you. So the recommendation from August, I think it still stands. That said, if there is no further instruction, then we'll continue to carry on under the current framework. So I just wanted to put that out there. Yes, today is for information only,
Yeah.
but
The directive is to be fine.
okay, so then we would be looking for that recommendation from the August report to proceed with the option 3B effectively. 3A and B? 3. Or just for clarity, the recommendation from August 7th staff report speaks about, and maybe Lisa, if you're able to bring that up on the screen, then we can see that recommendation. Of course, it's not on the agenda cover sheet today. And the recommendation is page 6 of 12, Lisa. Staff be authorized to report back with an amending bylaw to amend section 5013 as follows, removing the 2 times parcel size requirement for parcels outside the SCAs and zoned under part 700 residential, and applies the 2 times parcel size requirement to all parcels zoned under part 800 and part 900. So if that's the interest of the EASC, then we would undertake to prepare that report to come back to the EASC. Otherwise, if there's no recommendation today, then we'll carry on with the current framework.
The crowd went mild.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the I'd rather not maintain the status quo right now, Chair. I'd like to see some amendments done, and that's why, I mean, going back to 3A and 3B to me makes the most sense. So removing the 2 times parcel size from the SEAs and removing the 2 times parcel size from the rural areas as well. I'd like to see activity or action on those 2 items.
So, Director, you mean you want to apply the 2 times parcel size to the settlement expansion areas or 3A?
I would like to see the 2 times parcel size removed from the settlement expansion area.
Okay, so that would be A.
3A and 3B.
3B is to apply it to the.
Well, no, 3B is amend the process on that as well, is it not?
No, by applying it, no.
I think there continues to be some confusion
Yeah.
on this particular matter, and that may be why it's proven difficult to come to a recommendation or a resolution from the EASC. If we can work through that clarity today, then I suggest we do. But if there's more rationale or explanation that's needed, then perhaps it's It's more in a workshop format as well, just to be able to look at some mapping and understand the regulations in a more clear way.
So if I could, Chair, so again, looking at the options there on page 7 of 7 in the appendix, it says, for clarity, the following options have been presented. 3A is to amend the zoning bylaw 501, remove the 2 times parcel size requirement for part 700 of the residential zones.
Yep.
And then we got B, amend the zoning bylaw section 501 by applying the 2 times parcel size requirement to parcels within the settlement expansion area. So that's the question that I keep asking is, are we amending the zoning bylaw for in B that says that there's a requirement for 2 times the parcel size? And it looks like 3A says we're removing the 2 times, but in 3B it's saying we're applying the 2 times in the settlement expansion areas.
Yep, correct. Don wants to chime in. Don? Sorry.
Through the chair to the directors. Lisa, can you go to page, I think it's page 11, I believe, of 12, just further down with the staff report. Director Hardy, are you, I'm assuming you're referencing the 3A and 3B.
Correct.
From the staff report, yeah. So yeah, you know, the staff report itself, you know, mentions that, you know, if their committee choose to do option 2, 3A and 3B can we can expand those options. So option 2 is to delete the 514 of the zone bylaw, and let the approving officer. But option 3A and 3B provides more information and how we can approach that. 3A says that we can delete the 2 times parcel size in the zone bylaw in part 700 with rural residential parcels only. It doesn't include the agricultural land reserve or the resource designation, but it allows if the committee wants is to support some type of 514 in that category. Option 3B states that if they want, if the committee decides to further refine that these two part this component with the 2 times the parcel size, it will it will look at all zones within the settlement expansion area. If the directors want some further clarification, as James mentioned, that we can come back with a staff report to provide some more details and explanations on the 3A, 3B option to give some more clarity to this committee.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and that's probably our best move today is to have get an additional report with regards to A and B. I like A, and again, I'm just concerned about the 2 times parcel size requirement in B. And again, the question I keep coming back to is, if we went with the option where the province was making the decision at the end of the day for everything instead of the CBRD and East, are they required to make sure that there's a 2 times parcel size requirement in the settlement expansion areas? My understanding from staff was that no, they're not required to do that, but we are. So I'm just kind of wondering why we can't turn around and remove the 2 times parcel size in the settlement expansion areas.
But through the chair to Director Hardy, the 2 times we don't see these 2 times requests in the rural settlement nodes. The rural settlement nodes allows you to actually have smaller lots. This is where we want some type of growth to, in this area. So that's why we haven't seen any applications in the rural settlement nodes. We see them in their settlement expansion areas and their rural settlement areas, but not in the rural settlement nodes.
And I get and understand that.
Okay, well, the way
Okay.
I read it, B kind of cancels out the settlement expansion areas from the option 3. Amend the zoning bylaw by applying the 2 times parcel size requirements to parcels within the settlement expansion areas and to all part 800 resource. So you can't do ALR, you can't do the upland resource. And in B, you cannot do, you can't relax the 2 parcels in the settlement expansion area. So in my mind, if you want to keep control and don't want to give it away to the province, which I understand everybody's concerned about control because that's what it's about, that we're basically at 3A, which precludes the upland resource areas, which we don't have any purview over anyway, and also ALR land. So I think that's what we're looking for if we're gonna keep the reins of control on this thing. Which brings it to us, which is good. We can apply logic to it and deny or accept as need be. So I would propose that if we're going to make a motion now and clear the table for, it's only 2% or whatever we're talking here, that we approve 3A. If I get a seconder.
I'll second.
So we amend the zoning bylaw, section 5013, by removing the 2 times parcel size requirement for part 700 rural zone parcels. And obviously LR doesn't need to be said, I guess, in there. So moving second, any more discussion? Call the question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, staff.
Just think, after the next election, you guys will consider yourselves lucky this time. You don't know what you're going to end up with around this table. So, okay, that clears the table. Let's go on. So we've got the Regional Growth Strategy Minor Amendment Update for receipt. Seconded. Over to staff introductions.
Thank you, Chair. Brian Chow is our Planner 2 Long Range, and Robin Holm is Manager of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, and we'll be introducing the staff report in front of us. And I believe Brian will be starting us off. Brian, over to you.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Through the CEO to the chair and to directors. So good morning. This presentation provides a short update as to the progress on the Regional Growth Strategy Minor Amendment. So today's update is for information only and no decisions are required. First, I will refresh the director's mind in terms of the narrow amendment scope and the process of this project. Second, I'll summarize the referrals feedback and how it has been handled. Third, I will confirm that there are no policy or zoning impacts. And lastly, I will outline the next steps for adoption. So a copy of the draft RGS is in Appendix A of your agenda package. So this is the scope of the minor amendment project. This is a narrow targeted update only. The goal is to keep the RGS current without changing its vision or direction. So overall, the amendment includes the population and job projections updates using the latest census data, updates to any municipal and AR boundary changes, references to Comox's treaty process and our Indigenous Relations Framework, updating the greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets, aligning with the current provincial guidance, and referring to any targets and targets to the online performance dashboard so that the data are always up to date. And lastly, reference to action plans so that the RGS policies can be guided and the goals can be implemented through the action plans. In terms of how we got here, as you may remember, back in 2023, the board initiated a minor amendment to the RGS and confirmed the scope that was presented that just show you as within the minor scope amendment. In March of this year, the draft RGS was presented to the board, and the consultation plan was proposed to be approved, and it was approved by the board. Since then, the draft RGS was presented to the First Nations, member municipalities, all 4 advisory planning commissions, and provincial ministries. And right now, as of today, I'm reporting back on that consultation process before advancing this project to the formal bylaw referral stage. So when we receive comments from the referrals, we do a bit of triage. Any in-scope comments that fit within the predefined narrow targeted scope have been incorporated in the agenda package. And any of the out-scope comments are documented for the next full review, potentially possibly in 2027. Some of the in-scope feedback received included Comox First Nations that they requested the removal of any paternalistic language and the improved adoption of any reconciliation aligned wording. The advisory planning commissions, as mentioned before, all 4 of them supported the amendment as presented. Agricultural Land Commission wanted some clarity or clarification of the language and relating to the ALC Act and the ALR use and regulations in terms of the mapping, housing, and buffers. The out-scope comments can be categorized into 2 broad groups. The first group are any future policy and strategic directions which have been tracked for future review. And the second major group of comments received were mostly courtesy comments to remind the CVRDs of the operational procedures manners, which we have already addressed in our current practices. So overall, as a reminder that this project has no changes to zoning, OCPs, or local regulations. There's no anticipated impact on residents or property owners, and updates mostly to guide growth and development that have been consistent across all jurisdictions. And where do we go from here? So from October to November, this project has been presented to local municipal councils as well as the EESC today. And the next step is to actually notify the affected local governments, meaning our member municipalities and adjacent regional districts, and we have to give them 30 days under Section 437 of the Local Government Act for them to provide comments for the next board meeting, which is scheduled December 9th, for the RGS to be considered first and second readings. At that meeting, it's anticipated that the board will provide readings as well as to confirm whether the optional public hearing is required or not. And then the early of next year, we'll go through the bylaw amendment process. And as mentioned at today's meeting so far, that the next review framework for RGS is scheduled for 2027, in which the board will consider whether to review the RGS and whether it will be another minor amendment or more fulsome standard amendment. In summary, that this has been a narrow targeted update. It helps to keep the RGS as adopted in 2011 updated, current, and relevant to both us as well as our member municipalities. And it sets up the stage for potential comprehensive review. That's all I have for today, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't see Richard up there. Director Hardy, have any comments, questions? There you are. Thumbs up. Very good. You got up easy this time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And on receipt, did we move receipt? We did. Okay, so on receipt and unopposed. That carries. Okay, now we're into the bylaw enforcement policy administration updates. So over for receipt, first of all. Moved. Second. So over to you, staff for deductions.
Thanks very much, Chair. Amanda Yazinski is our Senior Manager of Building and Bylaw Compliance and has this administrative update to share with the board on your enforcement policy. Amanda, over to you.
Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Through the CAO to the chair. So this report outlines and proposes some amendments to the existing bylaw enforcement policy. It's administrative updates as well as some inclusion on new language on job description or job titles, sorry, and enforcement options, including the bylaw adjudication system and a language amending that would support nuisance complaints and add clarity on how we handle those. The objective of the bylaw enforcement policy is to provide certainty and consistency in the enforcement of regional district bylaws and to identify roles, responsibilities, and enforcement authority and methods, and the related supported policy and operational guidelines to enforce the regional district bylaws. This existing policy was approved in 2010 and was last updated in 2020 with additional administrative changes that were primarily around job titles at the time. A review of the current policy was done to ensure the policy is in alignment with recent changes to bylaws and enforcement procedures. Areas identified as requiring updating were allowing for flexibility on case-by-case basis for the requirement for 2 separate complainants regarding nuisance complaints, where the nuisance relates to light, smell, or smoke. We've had a few instances over the years, primarily around lighting, with nuisance complaints when there's only one property affected, and we weren't able to apply our current nuisance bylaw in those instances. This was challenging for both staff and residents when it came up, as well as the inclusion of building bylaw infractions and enforcement. So currently there's no standalone policy on how we handle building bylaw files, and we have been applying our current policy even though there's no language specific in it, as well as enforcement language around the inclusion of the bylaw adjudication system and how we use that for both compliance agreements and enforcement. The current policy only speaks to MTIs, which we've stopped using primarily since the adoption of the adjudication system. The proposed amendments are all outlined in Appendix B. There are 2 specific updates I would like to draw your attention to. Specifically, Section 4.2b of the current policy notes enforcement options involving quasi-criminal proceedings in provincial court, which include ticketing. As the CVRD has commenced using the adjudication system, primarily, this section of the policy has been updated and needs to reference the difference between the use of an MTI ticket, or municipal ticket information, and the bylaw offense notices, which is our adjudication process. Additionally, on occasion, bylaw enforcement staff receive isolated complaints from one neighbor regarding nuisance related to smoke, light, or smells from neighboring residents. The current section of the CVRD bylaw 377, which is our unsightly and nuisance bylaw, specifies an enforcement file is only action if we receive 2 or more complaints on a nuisance file. To address these situations, staff are suggesting an amendment to the bylaw enforcement policy that would allow staff to address these types of files when there's a situation when there's only one affected residence. Specifically with language that writes, in the instance of nuisance-related complaints only, a nuisance occurs when the act disturbs or tends to disturb the peace, rest, enjoyment, comfort, or convenience of 2 or more residents in the surrounding neighborhood or vicinity, unless the affected residence is determined to be the only affected property due to proximity or lack of additional residences in the area. So in our rural areas, this has been vital to get this updated. Additional changes also through the policy identifying roles and responsibilities, enforcement authority and methods, and the related policies and operational guidelines to enforce the regional district bylaws, as again noted in Appendix B. So additional updates outline where board authority would be required to commence legal actions such as injunctive relief, long form prosecution, and then having staff continue with the ability to ticket as needed and enter into compliance agreements through the adjudication process. So the recommendation on this report is that staff be directed to make the required amendments to policy P30, the bylaw enforcement policy, as identified in this report dated October 29th, 2025. Can I answer any questions you may have?
Wow. I'm sure there's some questions. Director Arbour, you're first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I have to admit, I was 70% mentally there when I read the report, but I think I got the gist of it. So my question, if it's in the report, I apologize. But the thing I latched on was where you see two individuals. And in my mind, I was like, do you mean two property owners? Because I would see value in exploring a discussion around, except for the one that you cited where, you know, there's just like one property next door or something like that. But I think it's easy for, you know, people that share the same property to file two things. I don't know if it was addressed. So my question is, should it be two property owners or two individuals?
Thank you. So there, through the chair, the reason it has come up through the policy is our bylaw that addresses nuisance and unsightly is written that two or more residents, and staff have been applying that as it was adopted as two separate residents, not two individuals in one household. So in the instance where we have one household that's only affected by maybe smoke or something, we haven't been able to apply. So through staff review and through a legal review on this particular portion of the bylaw enforcement policy, as well as the entirety, it was suggested that amending and having this in our policy on how we address these complaints would help support the public and what to expect, elected officials and staff, and how they would do that. So in our rural areas, typically if something's a nuisance, it's you know, we get two or more complaints, smell sometimes as well. But some of our more rural areas, sometimes dead end roads or just how properties are situated, it might only affect one property. So the ability to then case by case, if that comes up, to look into that and address it and accept that complaint is what this policy would guide us on. So in those instances, it may be just one individual that we could then take that nuisance complaint from.
Yeah, so I guess it will still maintain a qualitative assessment by staff, right? So I'm okay with that, you know, and I think that once we see major escalations, but I think earlier in the meeting, I don't know if you was there, but I was mentioning a special case where, you know, you just have one person that complains and everybody else is fine with it. And, you know, I like the concept of couple property. So it is in there, but in some exceptions where I can see both sides. So actually you've answered my question. Just that's how I would look at it too. So it's good.
Any concerns, Director Hardy? Nothing? Okay. Amanda, do you want to speak further?
I do. I just want to circle back and be very clear, so I'm answering properly, and so the directors are satisfied with land use complaints such as zoning, or even through our noise bylaws of building. We only require one complaint from the public. With nuisance, we require two through just the nuisance bylaw. So in your example from earlier on the RV, we still would just require the one complaint because that's a land use complaint. However, we have the discretion to enforce as well, this policy as well. And this has always been the way on any land use, is that we always try to get compliance. Now, when we come before you and we want to escalate it, is always the discretion of this table whether they're going to proceed with enforcement. So, and the one you mentioned earlier, some time went by, compliance was achieved. But yes, one complainant is what triggers us to open a file and go out. How that far that escalates through enforcement, those ones come back here for discussion always. So, but nuisance, we're saying now, 2 complaints through bylaw in those certain situations where there might not be two residents in the area, that we may case by case apply the bylaw if there's only one property affected.
Any more, Director?
No, I really like that you came back on the map on the mic because I'd missed that. And again, apologies for not like thoroughly reading the report. There were too many reports for me to dig into this weekend. My last question, I guess, is: are we aware of any jurisdictions, regional districts that have a 2 complaints requirement on land use? Is that what I'm trying to say? Is that an option available to us, or by law it has to be just one?
I'm not aware of any 2 complaints on land use. If there's specific land uses that you would want to apply more of a lens or more direction to staff to, that could be a standalone policy. So just on certain land use or certain types of files, we have a standalone policy, not to compare the 2, but just to give you an idea, we have a completely separate policy on how we deal with aggressive and dangerous dogs. Just can't live within this general policy. So that's a standalone policy that guides us on those situations. So if there is specific other matters through bylaw that you want to have addressed a certain way, that could be done through a specific policy, and that would be my suggestion on how to approach it.
Okay. Seeing no other questions. On receipt, anyone opposed? That carries. Recommendation attached. Seconded by me. Any more discussion on the recommendation level here? Seeing nothing. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? That carries. Community Parks and Greenway Service, 619, 620, 621. Projects and budget updates for the fall of 2025. Over to staff introductions.
Thank you, Chair. Mark Harrison is our Manager of Parks, and Mark will be introducing this report. As well, Lucy Bachark is our Chief Financial Officer, and Lucy will be supporting part of the discussion around the budget update. So Mark, over to you.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee, I do have a PowerPoint, if we could bring that up, please. Thank you. So this is just really meant to be a status report on the ongoing parks projects in services 619, 620, and 621, as well as to provide an operational update on those services. So this really is just for information only. This is something that we've been working on each year to provide this operational update in the Q3. And this year, we're also going to provide a 3rd quarter budget and variance report, of which Lucy is here to support me with that. So the report here is really to identify the successes of the service, but also to highlight some of the pressures that exist within our service delivery. So in terms of projects, project highlights, last year was largely focused on project planning. This year, we were able to implement and construct a number of projects across the region. So some really strong successes this year. On the islands, Denman Cross Island Trail, we were able to complete 3.5 kilometers of a new multi-use trail on the island that connects Owl Crescent to the Crabtree Bay ferry terminal. This has really increased public safety through the heavily populated portion around Owl Crescent, but also in the heavy traffic area near the Gravelly Bay ferry terminal. A huge thank you to the private landowner that generously granted us an SRW over their property near project. We are currently working on completing the Shingle Spit boat launch. It's looking to start the last pieces of the The deck has been constructed and the dock pieces have been constructed, and we're looking at this week to kind of start construction to put those in place. We'll have to work with the tides, and will involve some night work, but we're expecting that to be completed by the end of this month. So good progress there. In Bain Sound, we constructed the Union Bay playground. So we really added a valuable community playground space for the Union Bay community. And again, it was possible through a collaborative effort with, in this case, with the Union Bay Community Hall. In Electoral, construction work this year project. So we added substantial ecological restoration within the estuary and created a bunch of new estuarine habitat. Again, a very successful collaborative project with Comox First Nation and a number of our community partners. We also have completed design on phase 2 and are currently procuring that construction work. We also completed the Laszlo Greenway, which connects the Sand Pines, Point Homes community with the town of Comox. 2.5 kilometers of new multi-use trail, a really strong multi-jurisdictional project with the town of Comox. And then within Electoral Area C, we did deliver a small community greenway project near the Hillview Road, and we were also able to acquire a strategic piece of parkland north of Ham Road that'll eventually be used to help us support the expansion of the One Spot Trail. So needless to say, we've been really busy managing and delivering capital projects through 2025. Operationally, on top of all the projects we've been delivering, staff have also been managing maintenance and operations for our 99 parks and our 26 beach accesses that exist within our electoral areas. With the number of projects, capital projects, and all the operational requirements is starting to put a strain on our small park staff. Staff are increasingly being challenged to balance our operational service levels with our capital project delivery, which are becoming increasingly complex to deliver. Those operational budgets are necessary to ensure our public health and our safety while supporting a strong visitor experience. So that includes managing maintenance contracts, managing user and wildlife conflicts, managing park ecological functions, managing existing asset life cycles, supporting planning and programming initiatives, and managing hazards, which all require staff time and associated funding. Some of the specific highlights, the Goose Spit program that ran for 77 days this year, which was longer than the last few years. Last year it ran for 72 days, and the year previous it ran only for 38 days. So that was successful. It did cost $29,000 to deliver, which doesn't include any staff time. Even with the fire rings, it is notable that we did have over 100 non-compliant fires that were being reported. Goose Spit, which is our most heavily used park over the summer months, we had approximately 440,000 visitors from May through September. That park too, the log walls becoming increasingly difficult to manage, especially with the ongoing heavy winter storms, that we're starting to see these kind of climate impacts, increasing storm surges, high wind events that are creating hazards and need to be managed. This year with the climate impacts as well, we had a high number of tree hazards, and we expect that with climate change, that's going to continue to increase over time. And then we have our normal operational challenges such as vandalism, whether that's graffiti or damage to property, management of off-leash dogs, motorized vehicles, invasive plants, etc. So staff do continue to prioritize the health and safety and our contractual management, but we are being challenged a little bit with the timing and delivery of our capital projects, which themselves are becoming more complex. So new this year again was the third quarter budget variance. It's just a report on where we're at. And with that, I'll pass it over to Lucy.
Thank you. Through the chair to the directors, thank you, Mark. So as an initiative of financial services and advancement in best practice in this space, we have rolled up a third quarter budget and variance report. and are providing that as part of Mark's update, as he has explained already. So this type of reporting not only lets us know if something's gone astray with our 2025 budget, it also provides some good input as we prepare the 2026 budget as well. So overall, this report covers 3 services, and we're looking at an overall budget of about $2.8 million. Our year-end and budget, the year-end operating budget projections include a surplus of just over $216,000, and that's for service 621. For service 619, a surplus of just over $10,000, and a small deficit is being projected for service 620. Overall, and at a high level, these surpluses are largely made up of budget expenses, being under budget in expenses in areas of contracts and general service, our minor capital, and material and supplies. So we did provide some pretty full detail that's here in your report. So I wasn't going to go into any details, and there's more in the appendixes as well. And if there's anything more in particular that you'd like us to explain more, or something else that you're wondering, then I'll just thought we would just go about addressing those questions as they come up, as opposed to going through all of the individual explanations. And hopefully the report provides you a level of detail that's satisfactory to directors. But as we keep progressing with this, your feedback is very much appreciated. So one other note on the operating side of this projected surplus at this time, we're estimating that there's about 47,500 expected to be carried over to 2026. So this relates to those projects that are currently in your operating budget that aren't finished yet, that you'll see carry forwards into the 2026 budget. Okay, that's always something that we zero in on at this time of year as we begin preparation of our 2026 budget. And then a couple of notes on the capital budget. In total, Parks and Greenway Service operates under an approved capital budget of about $5.2 million. And of this amount, 4.5 million has come from or carry forwards from the year before. 2.7 has been spent to date. And, with that, as Mark is saying, a number of things that have come to a conclusion, which is great. And we do expect, however, at this time that there'll be about 10 projects that are carried forward into the next budget year. And the details for that are in your Appendix A. And as I was saying, we're happy to address any questions that you may have or any further detail.
Thanks very much. Looking around. Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. Did I read that correctly? I mean, there's this recurring line about the service being strained, which we haven't really heard as much in the past, and that was in the presentation as well. But did I read that correctly, or you're currently at pre-budget thinking of asking for a 10% increase above last year?
Through the chair, if I can just clarify, you're circling into a comment or information that we have in the equity report, right? As you see our preliminary budget figures being drawn together for the purposes of that equity report. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's before the equity report. I thought I saw a line of
In here?
potential. Let me pull it up.
Regardless of all that, from a 2026 budget perspective,
Yeah.
we are at a stage right now that it's quite preliminary, I would say. And with this particular service, it's high on our radar. So we have been, and we have to continue to pay some close attention to on how do we get to a place where it's more fiscally sustainable. So at the current time, the factors that I think are key anyways to keep in mind in the body of this work for 2025, you have a surplus that's being projected. I'll just speak to 621. That's just over the $216,000. So that's there with some carry forward projects that need to occur. Going into 2026, right now,
we certainly, and we highlighted this as you in your last budget cycle, there needs to be some more funds to deal with life cycling of all the various assets that are here in this service, building up those reserves. And we have estimated that to be $100,000 at this point. There's still work for us to do in this service, but what I can communicate at this point is we are seeing a need to increase taxation in this service to get it to a better place of fiscal sustainability. Okay.
That was a long yes.
Sorry, is that okay?
But that's good. I mean, the context is good, but I'll just, yeah, so heading into the next report, that's kind of good to know. And I guess I'll reserve my other comments once because obviously my lens is, I'm looking at both of those reports together today. Thanks.
Maybe I'll just add to that, Director Robert, you picked up on the commentary around the service being strained, and I think that is some carryover from last year. We've seen it in previous years as well. There's a lot of assets, a lot of parks, a lot of trails, a lot of process also to go through in delivering on some of the projects, whether they're capital or more minor in nature. And so there's a strain certainly. Mark was able to elaborate a little bit on the current team that works very hard on these projects, and I do want to commend the team for the large amount of projects that have been undertaken and that we've delivered on successfully. I think the ABC parks and the Denman and Hornby parks are certainly looked at as real shining lights in the community, and so I want to commend the effort of Mark and his team in undertaking that work. But I also want to recognize there's a strain there, and there is more work to be done to really be able to create more sustainable conditions for the ongoing delivery of these parks and trails.
My question is around our volunteers. Are we still maintaining a good relationship with our volunteers? Because at one time, I think we had working in parks, helping out like 80 volunteers or something. One year I can remember. So I'm just wondering if that's still the case.
Yeah, the volunteers are definitely a critical part of parks delivery, and those are being maintained, whether those are mental health groups or those are not-for-profit groups that help with our maintenance contracts. Those are critical for us and are helping us fiscally as well as also providing a community service. But those groups still need to be managed. They still take staff time and staff resources to manage those contracts.
Of course. But it looks like we still have a fairly solid volunteer base, and how do we demonstrate appreciation for all the efforts they're doing?
Well, the park staff are really amazing with our volunteer groups and are constantly providing thank yous and feedback during the course of the year. But we also do create or have special events for them at Christmas time. So, for example, one of our groups, we take them out bowling at the end of the year as say a thank you, or to take them out for lunch or things like that. So each year we do make sure that we have some sort of appreciation event for each of our groups.
Yes, that's great because they don't make volunteers much anymore. So any other questions on this? It's just for receipt. So I'll call a question on receipt. Anyone opposed? That carries. I'm wondering, do we want to grab lunch? We've got quite a bit of policies. We can do a working lunch. I get nods. Okay. So we'll yeah. Well, yeah, because it's actually 1:30 for heaven's sake. If we can work right through it, I think we'll just grab a plate. So 15 minutes and we're back. Director Hardy. You're there? Did you get something to eat?
Not yet. I will after.
Okay. We're gonna plow through a little bit here. Okay, I call the meeting back to order. And we have a equity consideration follow-up for report for receipt. Second. And over to CAO for staff.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report is the follow-up report to Electoral Area Services Committee direction from earlier this year. It's been supported with additional correspondence from Director Arbor regarding some concepts around how to potentially address some of those equity considerations. There's no recommendation per se. However, with the options presented in the report, there is some language also contained in the report if the directors want to undertake any of those particular options. Mark Harrison, manager of parks, is here at the table, as well as Lucy Wacharek. And Mark, I think you had some introductory comments here to make as well, and share some context around that. So, Mark, over to you.
Thank you. Through the chair to the directors. So as James has said, the report provides potential options in response to the committee's direction to explore targeted funding to support park operations, land acquisition, and capital projects within the Bain Sound portion of Area A. It provides options for the committee to consider. It doesn't provide any recommendations, and staff will implement the direction as provided by the committee. The options are a response to the letter received by Director Arbor, which outlined a detailed proposal with a range of costing. That proposed annual allocations were ranged from $135,000 to $365,000 a year and had a target range of $300,000 annually. Now, historically, the Parks Department has tried to balance park operations and capital development across the whole region with a long-term approach. And that's largely because of our limited staff resources and also because of the large number of parks and trails that the service manages. The approach has been guided by the Rural Parks and Greenways Strategic Plan from 2011, which is planned to be updated starting in 2026. And it will likely be significantly altered as a result of the newly established Regional Parks and Trails Service. The approach has also been opportunistic, as the park development relies heavily on collaboration and partnerships with a range of partners. So staff did explore the proposal in detail, and the report presents some possible options. Those include an increase in taxation by $135,000 a year, which was the minimum range, and that would result in an increase of taxation of approximately $10 to $12 per household. We also looked at an increase of taxation of $300,000 a year, which was the target range, and that would result in an increase in taxation of $23 to $27 per household per year. We also looked at the use of future expenditures reserve with funds specifically set aside for Area A as an option versus a separate reserve, which could have less administrative burden. And we also looked at status quo, which was just seeking to address our regional priorities through the annual financial work plan. So whatever the committee decides, consideration should be given to the operational impacts, including the possible need for additional staff resources and our ongoing operational costs. With that, we are open to any questions that may be have.
Okay, anybody, Director, you want to speak to it? Director Arbor?
I see Richard turn his mic on. I don't know if you're just going to go first.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And that's a good report, and I really appreciate that staff kind of outlined out a few options. And including going to bylaw and stuff like that. But I think on that one for the bylaw, part of the spirit of what we agreed in August, I think, is to reserve some time, as you outlined in the report, for the regional parks to kickstart and see what that means to our service. So I kind of would put kind of any bylaw effort right now aside until, and I think we talked about that kind of rebalancing, so that budgets are more like aligned between the areas. So for me, it really came down to option 1 and 2. And of course, you won't be surprised that I would argue for option 2, because that's the one that would make the service square, so to speak, between the 3 areas. And second is I keep hearing that, well, I keep hearing, we definitely heard it today, that the Park Service is strained. And I believe our community parks is one of the most appreciated services out there. And I don't know about the two of you, but staff probably knows from me, I keep feeling demand after demand after demand from communities. Like the rural communities are expecting more and more amenities and parks, probably more than we can deliver. But for me, at the 300 grand level, it would give a real springboard to get some really important initiatives going that people want to see. And I also want to acknowledge that staff says, you know, I realize that part of that money would be extra staffing resource and some asset management. And they're like, you know, those are general numbers around those initiatives. And I also realize not all initiatives will proceed. It'll depend on partner readiness and willingness and all that stuff. But at that level, it would really signal, I think, would posit us super well for some key initiatives, for example, with the ministry, for seeding the next round of playground and different initiatives like that. It would really provide that springboard. And then I would stop nagging the board, as I have for the last 4 years, around how budgets are allocated. And then maybe in 5 years from now, when we do the review of the parks, we can kind of square it up between all the areas and see how we're going to proceed, you know, long term.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I appreciate the work of the staff with regards to the report, and I fully understand and appreciate the concerns that Director Arbors put forward with regards to this particular park service and perhaps over the years, if we're looking from an equity perspective, Area A has been kind of left out. I guess if I'm going to be honest, option 4 to me is an option that I would look at. And again, where I would be going with that is again, the reprioritization of the work plan, so we can ensure that Area A is being supported moving forward. Looking at some of the requests, going from 135,000 to 365,000 per year to support a number of initiatives in Area A. Some of them I'm just kind of wondering about from a budget perspective, from a service perspective, when we start looking at property acquisitions, whether or not, if we're looking at new property acquisitions, again, there's the Regional Park Service, and possibly instead of going back to the constituents of A, B, and C and saying, hey, we're going to increase the tax for acquisition to $365,000 a year to allow for strategic property acquisitions. I think moving forward in the Regional Park Service, maybe that issue might or could be addressed there. So we could save dollars from Area A's requests with regards to supporting strategic property acquisitions moving forward through the Regional Park Service. So I'm just, again, looking at the proposed initiatives and the budgets associated with them. Some of them I'm struggling with after further review. And like I said, strategic property acquisitions is a budget that I'm struggling with right now. With regards to support active transportation projects, like we have a active transportation project service already. So could not the dollars that are being requested from Director Arbor from the 621 service come out of the actual active transportation budget instead of out of a new tax requisition or a higher tax requisition to folks? I'm also wondering about the Island Corridor Trail Agreement and whether or not that's an initiative that should be led by the CBRD and the funds coming out of the $600,000 budget that they have in place right now. Like I don't know or I don't understand why we would burden or add an additional tax requisition to A, B, and C constituents when the CBRD should be leading that campaign instead of Area A. I'm also wondering about collaborative efforts with Mosaic and asking for $10,000 to $30,000 a year to support that initiative with regards to recreational access to private lands. And I'm wondering again, with regards to the recreational service, and we've seen the village of Cumberland go and support the biking, mountain biking crews that have all these trails in place already with Mosaic. If there's a means again from the recreational service to provide some of that support that's being asked of in this amendment to the budget here. And then with regards to $5,000 to $25,000 a year to support nonprofit parks and recreational grants, again, there's the rural grants program, the community grants program that and other avenues out there that would provide those grants. So I'm just wondering again with regards to the ask of 135,000 to 365,000. At the end of the day, it's a 20% increase in the tax requisition. I know in previous budgets that we've looked at for other services, we've tried to keep an increase of budget, below 10%. And here we are asking for a 20% plus bump in the tax requisition. So those are just some of my comments or thoughts and concerns. Again, when I look at, is there a means of sitting down with the parks team and again, reprioritizing the work plan to ensure that, Area A is being supported moving forward if they don't feel that they have been supported over the years. So those are just some of my thoughts right now, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think one little correction.
Thanks, Chair. Director Hardy, you mentioned the active transportation as a topic noted in the staff report. CBRD does not have a separate active transportation service or line item for requisitioning any kind of funds. CBRD has an active transportation network plan that identifies many potential opportunities for projects. Some of those are being realized or would intend to be realized through the ABC Park service. But we don't have a service itself. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then speaking on the reference to the Island Corridor ENN Trail Agreement, certainly the CBRD is in the midst of the visioning process with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit. That is work that continues, and that is work that continues with Comox First Nation. I think the reference to the Island Corridor ENN Trail Agreement here, and these are pulled from Director Arbor's correspondence. I think the reference there was around some sort of trail improvements or some sort of site-specific improvements that would be opportunistic in nature. But I could let Director Arbor speak to more of those if he wanted to. I did want to note the active transportation piece that we don't have a service to that effect.
We tried. We didn't follow through with it. We didn't get the support we needed. So it was off the sort of the side of the desk, wasn't it?
So sorry, Chair, if I could follow up then. So with regards to that active transportation strategy, if I'm understanding correctly from the CAO, there isn't an active transportation strategy, but there is no service to support that strategy. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. The strategy was developed, the active transportation network plan was developed several years ago. And to implement any of those particular projects, we would look to the ABC Park Service as one area that we can fund such projects. The Royston elementary school trail project is one that we've been able to make some advancements on, but we don't have a service where we requisition taxation for those projects.
So if I could again, could you just maybe repeat the park service that was ABC or something? The ABC Park Service. So that's the one that we're talking about right now.
That's right.
Okay. So we have in the past directed dollars towards different projects. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Could you give me an example? Like you made mention of the Royston Elementary School project. How much was that?
Oh, I don't have figures in front of me on that particular project. We did rely on some grant funding to help with that.
Okay. So in addition to that, are there other projects then that are being prohibited, or that area A is being prohibited from? Or I mean, they can still pursue those other projects moving forward, right?
I think the board set 2 or 3 top priority projects for the active transportation network plan. The Royston Trail was one of them. And I believe the
Arden.
contributions towards the Lake Trail, Arden, active transportation improvements was another project. The Courtney to Cumberland connector, of course, that was the one that was for board consideration, and the board ultimately chose not to proceed with. And that was the scope of implementation up to that point in time.
Okay, great, thanks.
Just to interject, the Lazo Trail, that was, our funding came through ABC Parks, right? Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. There's another one too, right? Okay, Director Harbour.
Okay, thanks, Chair. That was the greatest takedown of my list that I've seen. So clearly, Director Hardy doesn't believe that a lot of these projects have as much merit, or at least could live in other places, which would require me to fight regional battles. In the last 2 years, I have lost every single battle or project involvement other than the housing corporation that I've been involved in. So yeah, no. So I think we're done here. I appreciate that Director Hardy doesn't want to have a 20% increase to rebalance for his taxpayers. That's legitimate. But the flip side of that is Area A has been contributing $500,000-$600,000 a year for the last number of years and returning about 300 grand. So that's the other side of the coin. And with those comments, I believe that we don't need to select any of the options. I believe I will ask for a service review and to split up the service. And then if my residents think, the residents that I represent think that the plan that I'm laying before you is good, then it proceeds, because that's what I do on Hornby and Denman with the Park Service there. We have committees on Hornby and Denman that give direction. I assist them. We bring it to this table. Ultimately, for Hornby, only the residents of Hornby Island pay for projects there, such as the boat ramp. And on Denman, such as the Cross Island Trail, only residents of the Denman pay for that. And if I want to put a 20% increase in requisition in those services, it goes ahead and I have to live politically with it, as we did with the shingle spit boat ramp, right? Those huge jumps, but they see the value right away. Residents that I represent in Bainstown are tired, very tired of pitching in regionally and not getting as much back as they put in. It's worse in recreation, unfortunately, so I need to decide what to do there. But for parks, I think that's probably the easiest way, is to say, let's have a service for area B and C, or you can go along with as you see convenient, and let's have a service for Bainstown. And I think long term, as I've said for a long time, I think that's what makes the most sense. That's how you will have more transparency and more sense of control around the future of these community parks for the residents that use those community parks and trails and active transportation and ENN and grants from nonprofits in that area. Thanks. So Chair, we could just not vote for anything, and I'll prepare a letter.
Chair, if I could.
Go ahead.
the question that I was asking, and again, is with regards to reprioritization of the work plan,
Yeah.
is again to ensure that there is fair and equitable opportunities for Area A moving forward. Regarding the budget that I asked questions about with regards to these particular services that we all pay into, whether it's again, I and again, I appreciate the comments put forward by the CEO with regards to the active transportation. I thought that there was an active transportation service, and I made a mistake there. But again, going back to instances with regards to asking for an agreement with Mosaic with regards to recreational activities. I mean, is that something that the CVRD could not undertake through the Regional Park Service? You know, again, the requests here with regards to a $30,000 a year support of the Island Corridor Trail Agreement. Is there not something that the CVRD can undertake with regards to whatever services that they have in place or whatever budget they have in place with the $600,000 plus? That some of these requests that are being asked from Area A, could they be undertaken through other services or other budgets through the CBRD? Like that was the question that I was asking, and perhaps maybe I didn't articulate very well, but I wasn't saying no to all these budgets. I was just asking whether or not there are other services that could cover some of these costs that are being requested from Area A at the end of the day. Also, with regards to, again, we're asking for a 20% bump to the tax requisitions of Area A, B, and C. And I guess, to be honest with you, you know, Area B and Area C have also made significant contributions to the Union Bay Fire Hall. So there seems to be, you know, what I'm hearing is, you know, poor me, nobody gives anything or doesn't contribute to Area A. But there are other instances where B and C do make significant contributions to Area A through other rural grant contributions, etc. So I would ask that those also be considered as well when we're looking at this particular budget. There have been instances where Area B has made significant contributions to Area A over the last couple of years with regards to supporting them for other opportunities here as well. So I guess the other concern that I would have here is, you know, based upon the conversation or the delegation that we heard from Fanny Bay this morning with regards to their hall, is what's a priority for Area A right now? Is it supporting and getting the Fanny Bay Hall up and into a condition where people can be safe in it? Or is it some of these other priorities? So what I've heard over the last little while is Canada and BC are saying, you know, we need to seriously consider wants versus needs, and whether some of these needs could be directed towards something else, such as the Fanny Bay Hall being upgraded. So those are just some of my thoughts and concerns here. And hopefully I haven't offended Director Arbor too much here with my thoughts and opinions. It's, again, just thoughts and opinions. And hopefully he'll reconsider what he just stated with regards to going for a service review now. But if that's the choice he decides to make, then that's on him.
If I may, I think that obviously I do not support splitting up the Park Service. We're always stronger together. I think that a lot of these issues, if I may, stem from disagreements with other services within the CVRD, not necessarily this one. I think that Director Hardy made a good point in that, you know, you cannot view this one service in isolation. When it comes to capital grants and engineering costs and projects, I think Area A dwarfs the other two areas combined in the funding they received. So you know, when you put it all in balance, again, we're much stronger together. I don't think there's a disagreement that there's been an inequity over the last few years. And I think you can obviously see it wasn't intentional in any way, shape, or form that a lot of these projects that went forward were opportunistic projects, which I've always made the point with parks, even the regional parks, that you never know what's coming up. You got to be ready. I think that the directors should be confident in the goodwill commitment from the other directors, that we want to see a balancing up of this. It's not as though it was, like I say, it was never intentional. It was never something we set out to do. It wasn't like that at all. I think there's a lot of these projects could be properly addressed through other functions, like Director Hardy was saying. We've got we've got our community halls. I mean, that would be a perfect place to fund things like playgrounds, because most of the playgrounds are in either those facilities or school district facilities. So we can work in partnership with those without having to lump it into this budget. Obviously, the director is probably looking for some deliverables coming up, with the election cycle being what it is right now, and we can help with that. But I don't think throwing out the baby with the bathwater is any solution. And I'll let the director talk now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, regarding community halls, I believe in 2019, I'm the one who actually pressed really hard for us to start a service for community halls, and I'm really glad we did that. And I tried to do as the work calls for at regional district, which is to look at every service in its own merit. And it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate greatly, as I've said before, the contributions that have been made by Area B and Area C in different services for different reasons. And I'm thankful, and I reciprocate on a lot of initiatives. In fact, you both voted for the new arena, which could increase tax requisition by about 700 grand in Area A. So you're welcome that I'm still in that service so far. So yeah, no, I don't want, there will be a little bit of ill feelings, of course, but at the same time, I am very comfortable in my view that long-term, Area A deserves its own park service. And if we're unable to, and the time to do it is probably now, as of now, because I don't want, obviously we're not going to force a 20% increase on Area B for something that, as you say, like both of you want me to go fishing in all these different pockets of the CVRD. Some of the pockets don't even exist, like the active transportation. Like, I have been looking to enhance for 7 years in office what happens in Area A. And I've been relatively unsuccessful in going at the level that is required for us to significantly move the dial on the parks and greenways in Area A, and these other items that are on the list, right? So I'm very comfortable going back to my residents to say, we're going to create a service that reflects the desires of the community. The 500 grand that they currently contribute, which returns 250 a year, will now be 500 grand. So for me, I'm actually better off financially to leave the service. It was already a compromise to try to arrive at something to keep things whole, right? So yeah, no, I think we're done. I think like the next step maybe to staff is service reviews. Like, we had one that was 5 minutes, and you saw me press for getting Comox out of the Housing Corp as fast as we possibly could. The two of you seem to want to continue to make the marriage work, so you want us to go to counseling and and that's the normal path, so we can do that together. And staff will have to hire an outside consultant, and then we'll have like 6 meetings over the next 6 months. And out of that will be an outcome, which will likely still be me departing. So I think it's the manner in which we do this. Thanks.
Well, I must say, I am disappointed. I think it's a team effort. I don't know what kind of reassurance would assure the director. Obviously, I would think there's always compromise in any situation. So I would ask that the director take a sober second thought over the next couple of weeks on this, because I don't see it being unattainable to get a compromise that everybody can live with. I think we're always, like I say, we're always better when we can pull all in the same direction, or paddle in the canoe in the same direction. I think that there's possibly, as I say, you go fishing. I mean, there is other opportunities, there's other options, but it sounds like there's some emotional circumstances here that probably date back to different situations and instances previous to this, maybe with other services of the regional district. But in parks, I mean, when you talk about parks, I think that we can level that up so that it's equitable for the residents of Area A. I don't think we saw this coming. Obviously, there was a lot of activity in Area C, but I think we're done in Area C for park acquisition. So I don't think we're going to be coming to the well for more buckets anytime soon. I don't know about Area B. I don't think they've got their established parks. The biggest established parks, I think, are in Area B, aren't they? Seal Bay and Goose Pit, etc. Some of the most important parks. So yeah, and then to say that we're going to be talking about reprioritizing some of our ABC Parks initiatives, I think all the olive branches are out there. But I would just caution the director to give us some sober second thought, as I say, because you got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, thanks. And I would encourage the other directors to do the same. And I can give a couple of weeks for sure before tabling a letter. Let's do a mental exercise here for the two of you, maybe that I'll leave you with as we reflect on that over the next couple of weeks. Is following your mentality that we are stronger together. We should be advocating to bring in the Park Service, Hornby and Denman, because we will be stronger together as one service for community parks that is the entire region. So now let me think about how I'm going to go and pitch that to Hornby and Denmanites that already have an existing service, that we are stronger together and they should be part of the entire service. It will be an absolute non-starter for them. And I know that residents of Bainsound will be so thrilled when they have a service that they control and that they can give direction to, rather than what is essentially, because of its size, has become very much a staff-led service. That our only input is that's, for the most part, is so high on the numbers at budget time that it's hard to break it down to make sure that I have because the lens that staff applies to ABNC is very much a regional lens, and as they say in the report, opportunistic and based on which partners are where. And yes, it just so happens that in Area A, there's not going to be a lot of land acquisition. A lot of the stuff I have on the list here is actually activity-based and improvement-based to certain amenities. So yeah, we can give it a couple of weeks, but I think I will wait for the two of you to come back. I think there were some options today that were on the table that I could have lived with, and one principal one that actually puts more resources into parks. But for me, to leave is a huge win. I'm going to double the size of the activities that happen in Bainsound with keeping the requisition the same. So it's a massive win to Area A if we split up. Thanks.
Would the director like to elaborate on which ones he could compromise on? Sorry? Option 2. Well, in light of the impasse, do I have any option to defer this to future discussion? Then I'd make the motion to, if I make my own motion, defer this to the next ESC meeting. Give some heads a chance to cool off a bit. Okay. Anyone opposed? That carries. Okay, what do we got now? Parks regulation bylaw amendments. Move it. Second, by Director Hardy.
Thank you, Chair. Mark Hart is our Parks Planner, and Mark will be introducing this proposed amendment to the Parks Regulations bylaw. Mark, over to you.
Thank you. To the chair or to the committee through the chair. This report is to recommend amendments to the electoral areas parks regulations bylaw, specifically to amend the bylaw to replace the existing one spot trail Macaulay Road map with a new map which includes a recently acquired parcel which extends the trail to Ham Road. It also would amend the bylaw to add a recently completed multi-use path. Amendments would include adding the trail to the list of CVRD parks, Schedule A, the list of CVRD parks requiring dog leashing in Schedule D, and the map series included in Schedule F. Finally, the recommendation would be that the multi-use path be referred to as the Lazo Greenway going forward. These amendments and additions are intended to ensure that park regulations apply to and are enforceable within these newly added parks. Just as a reminder, the Lazo Greenway was a cooperative partnership between the CVRD and the town of Comox. It's a 2.5 kilometer trail, 1.5 kilometers of which is within electoral area B within the CVRD. Funding for that came largely from the Federal Active Transportation Fund, and it's operated through a license of occupation with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit. The other amendment would be for an extension to the one spot trail. The CVRD acquired a 2.2 hectare parcel in 2025. That parcel promises to extend the trail 740 meters, but the trail currently remains unopened and there is no trail at this point pending further planning and trail development. Thank you.
Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to do a double check in this era of sensitivity around naming. Who was Lazo?
To the chair or to the committee through the chair, I regret that I'm not aware of who Lazo was.
Yeah, I'm really sensitive to that. Hopefully, Chair Grieve knows because he's got such long history. Maybe Dr. Hardy. I've seen a lot of naming gone wrong, and I think people need to pay really attention. And today's item is actually the naming of this, and I don't know who Lazo is, because it could be the Hardy Greenway or the Hamir Greenway or a number of things. I think we're talking about geographical location that's named after someone. I don't think that's a Comox First Nation language name, Lazo. So I just want to make sure that we avoid finding later that we're not too proud of Lazo. And maybe we should be really proud of Lazo. He might be somebody absolutely fantastic and really deserving, but I'm just saying we need to be careful with naming. Thanks.
Well, actually, back in 1847, there was a shipwreck off the Lazo Point, and it wasn't named that at the time. And the captain's dog was named Lazo, and Lazo carried his master all the way to the shore and revived him. Of course I am. Oh, maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. That's not like a good story to me. Further to that.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Director.
Yeah, revolving around the funding for the Federal Active Transportation Fund. Is that a fund that's fully expired? And again, going back to the previous item that we talked about on the agenda, is there a means of acquiring some funds there to help out Area A with regards to some of the stuff that they had talked about with active transportation projects?
Thank you to the chair, or to the committee through the chair. That fund is now expired, but it has been replaced. The new fund has not been fully implemented, but it is promised for the next fiscal cycle with the federal government. So the Parks is keeping a close eye on that, and will be ready to apply for more funds as those opportunities arise.
Follow up, Chair?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, so again, based upon the previous agenda item where we talked about trying to help Area A out with active transportation projects, could we ask staff to maybe pursue again the equivalent to this federal active transportation fund as a means of trying to help Area A out with their active transportation projects?
Mr. Chair, we're always looking for grant opportunities for projects, capital works, and otherwise. This is a really good example of an opportunity where there was senior government funding for a project, and we would continue to do that as our work plan gets defined and built out. So I think I would want the directors to feel confident that we will pursue all grant opportunities as they present themselves for our projects.
And does Area A have any active transportation projects in line right now?
I would have to go back to our work plan to see. The focus really is on the ones I mentioned previously at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. If you go in the previous correspondence from me that was in the last agenda item, you'll see a link to the active transportation strategy, which links to the Area A specific active transportation priorities, X, Y, Z, actually W as well. So there's 4 or 5 that total together, as I recall, it was close to $7 million. And those projects are already prioritized. They were prioritized through the active transportation strategy. Thanks.
Okay, so we're just on the report still.
Yeah.
Right? Any more on the report? Not a thing. Okay, anybody opposed to receiving the report? Seeing none that is received. We have recommendation 1 for a motion.
I'll move 1.
Moving second on 1. Any further discussion on 1? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Carries. And recommendation 2, please.
Move 2.
Moving second on 2. Seeing no lights on 2. Anyone opposed? 1 opposed. And we can actually find out who Lazo was.
We did some quick analysis, and from the BC Geographical Names Inventory. Lazo comes from the Spanish word for snare, and it's reference to an early explorer from 1791 naming the cape Punta de Lazo de la Vega. So it comes from the Spanish word snare. But I take your point, Director, around the reference to parks namings, and we do need to be very mindful. And I believe we have policy in place that defines some of that. I'm seeing nods from our park staff. We do have policy in place to be considerate to that. So this is the recommendation being put forward. If you would like to refer it and have further conversation, we can certainly do that as well.
We could take out the and further that. Want to leave the and further out? No, we can change it anyway. So I'll revise my story. It was actually 1743 when the Spanish explorer Juan de Fuca, who was actually Greek. Did you know that? That's not even his real name. He was actually a Greek sailing with the Spanish fleet. That's the true part. I know that part for sure, but I don't know his dog was named Lazo. Okay, this is just getting too much fun, and we're already at 1:40. We're going to go to the 2025 Water Drought Restrictions Conservation Update. Move and second it. I'll second it, and over to Chris. Chris LaRose, Manager Water, Wastewater, Above Water, Below Water, and Surface Water.
There we go. Thanks to the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is the second annual closeout report that we've now scheduled for November of each year, just reporting out on the series of on drought conditions and water restrictions over the year, which are reported monthly throughout the summer with the dashboards. So this year, just to note, we added a back page to the dashboards that includes visual representations of the consumption year over year, actually compared with the previous 5 years, to help tell the story about this year versus the previous. So with the restrictions now behind us across the board for another year, we've got some key points as we look back on this summer. So we peaked at stage 2 in the Comox Valley system and Union Bay, and stage 1 in Royston. And we did not implement stage 3 anywhere this year. So that's reflected in the fact that we peaked at drought level 3 compared to last year where we went up to drought level 5. We did reach a new record peak for the Comox Valley water system in 2025, both in terms of maximum day demand and monthly demand. We saw higher consumption in the Graham Lake system this year than we did last year, which is a little bit out of step with that slightly lower drought levels, which is interesting. We'll definitely be assessing that. And for that system, we just does not currently have a water restriction bylaw, so we haven't been reporting on levels of restriction for that system, but we have been reporting on consumption. But our intention is to bring forward a water conservation bylaw for that system at some point soon, just to help us provide an additional tool for working to reduce consumption. The graphs helped illustrate progress in Union Bay year over year from last year. If you'll recall, back to last summer, we had some pretty excessive consumption that drove leak investigation and some resolution of some large leaks. And we were very clearly able to see the benefit of that this year. That was significantly lower than average consumption. And then conversely, they also helped to highlight excessive consumption in the Black Creek Oyster Bay system, which we are investigating. And finally, just a note on rebates. Rebate uptake definitely fell this year compared to previous years and reflecting a bit of a trend. But we do have plans to enhance our rebate program as part of the enhanced water conservation messaging that will be delivering coming out of the, or planning to recommend coming out of the water master plan for the Comox Valley water system. So that'll expect that in early 2026. Yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, directors? Water, water everywhere. No questions? Thank you, Chris. So, we're gonna vote on receipt of Chris's report. We did move it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone opposed? That carries. Now I need a motion to go to our our regular in-camera meeting.
New business, yeah.
Oh, we have a new business. That's right too. Okay, so I think we have new business. Director Arbor.
Yes, thanks. I would just keep it simple and ask that staff ahead of tomorrow's meeting come back with options to potentially support the Fanny Bay Hall request presented today. And I would just leave it at that because I think they have a number of things to look at and consider. And I'm hopeful personally that we could do it, but it doesn't mean that we could do it. So I think if staff has expressed earlier that they could do at least a brief analysis of an option around that, and I'll make sure that my alternate director Ian Monroe will debrief around the topic so that he can speak to it in my absence tomorrow.
Could I follow up, Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to what service the funds would come out to support Fanny Bay if we're going down that road.
I think that, so there's the Bain Sound Community Facilities Service, 672. That's the that is the service that we would look most closely to, and that's the one we spoke about having some reserve funds, as well as some requisition that goes towards a number of community facilities in Vancouver Island portion of Area A. We could also give some consideration to the Rural Community Grants Service. You're familiar with that from previous discussions at EASC, whether there's any outstanding funds available in those rural community grants. That could be a potential. And then also, yeah, a brief cursory look at any other potential. It is a very quick turnaround. We'll do what we can to come back with some options if that is what the committee wants. I will also note that I understand a building permit would be required for this work, and that's something that would have to be turned around very, very quickly if it would to meet the timing that the delegation spoke to, which I believe would start next Monday. So a very, very quick turnaround. So there's a lot of considerations on this this particular one.
And funds coming from different services, is that right?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
We'll take a look at what the options might be.
Thanks. Just another example how we're working with each other, hopefully.
Point taken. Director Arbor.
Thanks. On the building side, I would just hopefully that the Fanny Bay Association and the regional district take inspiration from Donald Trump's retrofit of the White House and how quickly they turned that around. So on a multi-billion-dollar project, so hopefully we would be able to. I don't know our processes though. So that is, I'm really glad the CEO brought that up. It's not something that came up in the presentation today. So hopefully that there'll be a touch base. I'll probably touch base with Tammy about that today.
So on that, we'll call the vote. Anyone opposed? And now, motion to adjourn to in camera. We will take time and clear the courtroom. Muddy Coke can. They don't trust me. They took away the gavel. Oh, no, it isn't. But they gave it to James so they could hit him with it. This is